Chapter 15:14. Actually, there's no need to think about it, because someone will come to help very soon, Tian Mushi said calmly. Tian Mushi said indifferently. Everyone cast doubtful gazes at her when they heard that. Tian Mushi bitterly smiled and did not say anything else. The person that Tian Mushi said would come to help was Xiao Chun. Tian Yu is seriously injured, so it would be strange if Xiao Chun did not come personally. Moreover, Tian Mushi had already sent a message to Xiao Chun, telling him about Tian Yu's injuries. Xiao Chun would definitely come, and Xiao Chen's arrival would completely change the situation. The barbarian race only had two puppets, one holding back Tian Mushi and the other holding back Tian Fun. So if Xiao Chen joined in, what would Zhongshan do? There was no other way. However, while Xiao Chen's arrival was a good thing for the sky race, it was troublesome for Tian Mushi. When she thought about how Xiao Chun would personally come to the Sky Barbarian mountain range and see the seriously injured Tian Yu, Tian Mushi felt a headache coming on. While Tian Mushi was having a headache on the other side, in the human race's clear sky city, Xiao Chun did indeed receive Tian Mushi's message, and his eyes flashed with anger. Sensing the change in Xiao Chen's mood, Qin Shiru and the other two girls felt a little strange. Then, Hundred Flower Fairy gently asked, "Husband, what's wrong?" Tian Yu is seriously injured. Xiao Chun did not hide it from the three girls and said calmly. Tian Yu was injured and unconscious by the barbarian race's first holy son, Zhongshan. Hearing this news, Xiao Chun was naturally furious, not only because of Zhongshan, but also because of Tian Mushi. Thinking back, Xiao Chun had repeatedly sent messages to Tian Mushi, asking her to take care of Tian Yu. But who would have thought that Tian Yu would be seriously injured and unconscious in the first battle? Hearing that Tian Yu was injured, Qin Shiru and the other two girls' expressions changed slightly. Then, Xiao Chun said coldly, "I'm going to the Sky Barbarian mountain range." Since Tian Yue was injured, Xiao Chun naturally had to go to the Sky Barbarian mountain range personally. Hearing this, Qin Shiru and the other two girls also expressed that they wanted to go together, but they were rejected by Xiao Chun. The current Sky Barbarian mountain range was not a good place. Tian Yue was already injured. Xiao Chun did not want Qin Shiru and the other two girls to be hurt. His attitude was very firm, and there was no room for negotiation. Even when Gu Lingyao acted coquettishly, Xiao Chun did not relent. When they saw Xiao Chen's resolute attitude, the three young women could only choose to give up in the end. But they still warned Xiao Chun repeatedly that he must be careful in all matters while heading to the Heaven Barbarian mountain range. Xiao Chen nodded in response to the three women's instructions. Then, he went to Yinyangzi's residence and told her about his trip to the Tianmeng mountain range. As the greatest holy son of the human race, Xiao Chen naturally had to inform Yinyangzi and the others if he wanted to head to the Sky Barbarian mountain range. Yinyangzi exhorted Xiao Chun slightly when she heard that. Afterward, she simply said, "Xiao Chun, the human race cannot participate in the Sky Barbarian War, so you can only represent yourself when you head to the Tianmeng mountain range. The human race will not interfere in the Sky Barbarian War either. You have to understand." Yinyangzi did not stop Xiao Chun because she knew very well that with Xiao Chen's personality, it would be useless even if she tried to stop him. Xiao Chen nodded when he heard that. Xiao Chun did not plan on using the human race's strength in the first place. After all, the ghost race was still eyeing the human race covetously. It would be unwise to interfere in the Sky Barbarian War at this time. There was no need for the human race to interfere, and Xiao Chun was not representing the human race. He was only representing himself and Tian Yue. With Yinyangzi's agreement, Xiao Chun did not waste any time and prepared to head to the Sky Barbarian mountain range on the same day. At the teleportation portal of Haoyan City, Xin Yuanling, Qin Shiru, and the other two girls came to see Xiao Chun off. Looking at Xiao Chun, Xin Yuanling said, "Third brother, you really don't need me to go with you?" Xin Yuanling originally wanted to accompany Xiao Chun to the Sky Barbarian mountain range, but Xiao Chun refused. "Big brother, it's not easy for the Xin Yuan clan to stabilize. You should stay in Clear Sky City. Besides, I'm only going for Tian Yue." It's not a big deal, so there's no need to make a big fuss about it, Xiao Chun said to Xin Yuanling. Without needing anyone else to follow him, Xiao Chun stepped into the teleportation formation alone and disappeared. Xiao Chun set off towards the Sky Barbarian Mountain Range. The distance from the human race to the Sky Barbarian Mountain Range was naturally not short, and there was no teleportation formation connecting to it. Therefore, from Clear Sky City, Xiao Chun could only go to the border between the human race and the beast race, then enter the beast race, and through the beast race, enter the Sky Barbarian Mountain Range. Xiao Chun naturally ran amok in the human race's territory, and Xiao Chun did not encounter any difficulties in the beast race's territory. With the support of the dragon race, Xiao Chun could also use the teleportation formations in the beast race's territory at will. After using several teleportation formations in a row, Xiao Chun quickly entered the Sky Barbarian Mountain Range. However, in the Sky Barbarian Mountain Range, it was not so easy for Xiao Chun to use the Sky Barbarian Mountain Range's teleportation formations again. However, Tian Mushi was clearly prepared. She had already sent 2 disciples of the Heavenly Palace to wait at the border between the Sky Barbarian Mountain Range and the Dragon Race's territory. As soon as Xiao Chun entered the Sky Barbarian Mountain Range, the 2 disciples of the Heavenly Palace took the initiative to find Xiao Chun and respectfully said, "Holy Son Xiao Chun, we are waiting here on senior sister Tian Mushi's orders." Tian Mushi is quite smart. She knew I would come. Xiao Chun unhappily snorted when he heard that. Tian Yu was heavily injured, so Xiao Chun naturally did not treat Tian Mushi well. Although the 2 disciples' faces sank, they did not say anything. Before they came, Tian Mushi had told them that no matter what Xiao Chun said, they could not come into conflict with Xiao Chun. The 2 disciples of the Heavenly Palace naturally obeyed Tian Mushi's orders 100%. Therefore, after hearing Xiao Chun's words, although they were indignant, they forcefully endured it. Without saying anything, Xiao Chun said indifferently, "Let's go. We're going to the Sky Barbarian Mountain Range." With the disciples of the Heavenly Palace leading the way, the journey was naturally much more convenient. Therefore, it did not take long for Xiao Chun to arrive at the Sky Barbarian Mountain Range's encampment. Outside the encampment, Tian Hifeng, who had fought with Xiao Chun before, personally welcomed him. However, Xiao Chun did not pay any attention to him and only asked, "Where is Tian Yu?" It could be said that he had completely ignored Tian Hifeng. Tian Hifeng's face darkened when he saw this. "Xiao Chun, this is the Sky Barbarian Mountain Range." It had only been a few years since they last met, but Xiao Chun had actually completely ignored him. Naturally, Tian Hifeng was displeased. However, before he could finish speaking, a terrifying pressure came from Xiao Chun's body and rushed towards Tian Hifeng. The terrifying pressure caused Tian Hifeng's face to change. At the same time, Xiao Chun's voice rang out again. "Where is Tian Yu? I don't have time to talk nonsense with you. Please add me to your collection. Please recommend me." Chapter 15:15. A terrifying pressure pressed down on Tianhe Peak. In the face of such pressure, Tianhe Peak actually felt like it was facing Tian Mushi. He knew that Xiao Chun had defeated Gue Yintian and was ranked 4th on the Saint rankings. He had become the strongest person below Long Yang, Tian Mushi, and Shunjun. However, even though Xiao Chun had such a battle record, Tianhe Peak still did not believe that Xiao Chun could be compared to Tian Mushi and the other 2. However, at this very moment, when Xiao Chun's terrifying pressure spread out, Tianhe Peak's thoughts changed. At the very least, Tianhe Peak felt that Xiao Chun really did have a chance of contending against Tian Mushi, Shunjun, and Shinjun. It was too shocking, but it was the truth. Just the pressure alone was enough to make Tianhe Peak fearful. Tianhe Peak did not dare to say anything more and personally led Xiao Chun to the place where Tian Yu lived. As it was in the Sky Barbarian Mountain Range, it was naturally impossible for the environment to be too high. It was a very simple wooden house, and Tian Yu was resting there. When Xiao Chun walked into the wooden house, he saw Tian Yu lying on the bed and Tian Mushi sitting by the bed. Tian Yu had already woken up in the past 2 days, but her body was still very weak. She smiled when she saw Xiao Chun. At the same time, Xiao Chun quickly walked over to the bed and held Tian Yu's hand as he asked in concern, "How are you? Are you all right?" "I'm fine now. I'll be fine after resting for a while." Tian Yu smiled when she heard that. His life was not in danger, so Xiao Chun was relieved. He then looked at Tian Mushi. Tian Mushi felt a headache coming on when she saw Xiao Chun looking at her. However, there was no way she could avoid it now, so she could only smile bitterly and say, "I'm sorry." All right, all right, all right. You don't need to say anything. It's all my fault. It's all my fault. All right, I owe you a favor." Tian Mushi had already guessed how Xiao Chun would react when Tian Yue was injured. He was a wife-doting maniac. Therefore, Tian Mushi was too lazy to explain anything and directly chose to admit her mistake. Hearing Tian Mushi's words, Xiao Chun couldn't say anything more. However, he still said with dissatisfaction, "Tian Mushi, you really owe me a big favor. You let Tian Yue suffer such serious injuries in exchange for a favor from you." Huh! Anyone could hear the displeasure in Xiao Chen's voice. But in response, Tian Mushi could only smile wryly. "I knew this blockhead would be like this." Sigh. Tian Mushi sighed. Tian Mushi had already guessed Xiao Chen's reaction. Of course, the reason why Tian Mushi reacted this way was because she had already acknowledged Xiao Chun. She had truly placed Xiao Chun on the same level as herself. If it were anyone else, even if Tian Mushi didn't protect Xiao Chun well, Tian Mushi would definitely beat them up if they dare to say that. The world still didn't believe that Xiao Chun had the strength to stand shoulder to shoulder with Tian Mushi and the other two, but Tian Mushi knew that Xiao Chun had already reached this stage. At the very least, Tian Mushi didn't dare to say that she could win against Xiao Chun with 100% certainty. When one's strength reached a certain level, the way they interacted with each other was naturally different. Therefore, Xiao Chun was fully capable and qualified to express his dissatisfaction in front of Tian Mushi. This was how people interacted with each other. Both sides had to have the ability to flip the table. Otherwise, how could they get along? With a bitter smile, Tian Mushi didn't refute Xiao Chun. However, when Tian Yu heard Xiao Chen's words, she immediately spoke up for Tian Mushi. Holding Xiao Chen's hand, Tian Yu said, "Husband, senior sister didn't expect that Chongshan would have two puppets. Senior sister really can't be blamed for this." Tian Yu took the initiative to speak up for Tian Mushi. Seeing this, Xiao Chun naturally couldn't say anything more. Moreover, Tian Yu's life was no longer in danger, so Xiao Chen's dissatisfaction dissipated a lot. After accompanying Tian Yu for an entire afternoon, Xiao Chun and Tian Mushi finally began to stroll around the Sky Clan's encampment at night. In the entire Central World's younger generation, only Long Yang and the Divine Lord had the qualifications to walk side by side with Tian Mushi. Now, however, there was another person, Xiao Chun. Along the way, the disciples of the Heavenly Palace would respectfully salute Tian Mushi when they saw her. At the same time, they would also look at Xiao Chun in confusion. They couldn't understand why senior sister Tian Mushi valued Xiao Chun so much. Of course, they didn't know that Tian Mushi didn't value Xiao Chun. Instead, it was because Xiao Chun already had the qualifications to be on equal footing with Tian Mushi. Xiao Chun didn't care about the gazes of the Heavenly Palace disciples at all. Tian Mushi asked as they strolled, "What do you plan to do next? Since we're already here, there's no point in going back like this. I'll help you deal with Chongshan. You'll owe me one more favor," Xiao Chun said with a smile. Whether it was because of Tian Mushi or Tian Yu, Xiao Chun wouldn't let Chongshan go. Tian Mushi smiled and said, "I'll add one more condition. Help me deal with those two puppets." Those two puppets were the most important. Tian Mushi couldn't destroy them by herself, but if Xiao Chun joined forces, the two of them would be able to do it. Hearing Tian Mushi's words, Xiao Chun turned his head and said with a helpless expression, "What good will killing Chongshan and destroying those two puppets do to me? Then I'll owe you two favors." Hearing this, Tian Mushi revealed a bright smile and quickly ran away. After running for some distance, Tian Mushi turned around and looked at Xiao Chun and said, "My favors are really precious. No matter how much you want them, I won't give them to you. You're the first person I've ever owed 2 favors to. Remember, Chongshan and those 2 puppets. You promised. After speaking, Tian Mushi didn't give Xiaochen a chance to reply and ran away. This was the first time Xiaochen had seen this side of Tian Mushi. She was as innocent and cute as a young girl. Seeing Tian Mushi's back gradually disappear, Xiaochen shook his head and bitterly smiled. He then turned around and walked towards Tian Yu's residence. Xiaochen could be said to have been forced to agree to Tian Mushi's 2 conditions. But to be honest, Xiaochen didn't think about refusing. After all, he was already here. Moreover, since Chongshan dared to attack Tian Yu, Xiaochen naturally wouldn't let him off. After returning to Tian Yu's room, Xiaochen carefully took care of her. At the same time, Tian Mushi was also in Heavenly King's residence. Heavenly King looked at the extremely lazy Tian Mushi and asked, "How is it?" "Chongshan is dead for sure," Tian Mushi replied with a smile. If Xiaochen attacked, Chongshan would definitely die. Heavenly King slightly nodded, but he still asked doubtfully, "Are you sure Xiaochen can kill Chongshan? Is he really that strong?" "I don't dare to say anything else, but I can tell Palace Master that the rumors about Xiaochen in the outside world are all true," Tian Mushi replied, and then walked out of the room. Begging for collection, begging for monthly votes, begging for recommendations. Chapter 15-16. Regarding Xiaochen, the rumors in the outside world were all true. As for what the rumors were, it was naturally that Xiaochen already had the strength to stand shoulder to shoulder with Tian Mushi and the other 2. Tian Mushi's words undoubtedly proved that Xiaochen truly had the strength to contend with the 3 of them. As a result, Chongshan was naturally no match for Xiaochen. Tian Mushi directly went out of the room, while the Heavenly King revealed a strange expression. He thought to himself, is Xiaochen's growth really that fast? Tian Mushi wasn't worried about whether Xiaochen could kill Chongshan or not, or rather, she didn't have the slightest doubt. In the next few days, Xiaochen stayed by Tian Yu's side, and as time passed, Tian Yu's body also recovered quite well. 5 days passed in a row. On this day, a great battle broke out between the Tian clan and the Barbarian clan. In the wooden house, Xiaochen looked at Tian Yu with a chuckle and said, "Don't worry, I'll be back soon. And, husband, be careful." Hearing this, Tian Yu obediently nodded in response. When the great battle broke out, the experts of the 2 clans were all mobilized. In the sky above the Sky Barbarian Mountain Range, Tian Mushi, Tian Fun, and the other Tian clan warriors were once again facing off against the Barbarian clan warriors led by Chongshan. In the previous battle, it could be said that the Tian clan had suffered a loss. With the 2 powerful puppets, the Barbarian clan had the advantage. Because of this, Chongshan didn't continue to hide the 2 puppets this time. After seeing Tian Mushi, he took out the 2 puppets and sneered. "Tian Mushi, I'm afraid this battle won't be as simple as last time." In the previous battle, the Tian clan had suffered a small loss, and this time, Chongshan clearly didn't plan to let the Tian clan warriors off so easily. Even if he couldn't completely annihilate them, he would at least severely injure the Tian clan. With the 2 puppets holding back Tian Mushi and Tian Fun, no one in the Tian clan was a match for Chongshan. Chongshan could completely unleash a massacre without restraint. However, hearing his words, Tian Mushi smiled and said, "Chongshan, you're thinking too much." Logically speaking, since she already knew the strength of the 2 puppets, Tian Mushi should be incomparably fearful. Moreover, the Tian clan had already suffered a loss last time, so Tian Mushi's mood should be even heavier. However, facing Chongshan and the 2 puppets, Tian Mushi's to a smile, as if she didn't care about the puppets at all. Where did Tian Mushi's confidence come from? Without a doubt, it came from Xiaochen. Just as Tian Mushi finished speaking, a spatial crack appeared beside her. Immediately, a handsome young man in a white robe slowly walked out from it. Chongshan's face darkened when he saw the young man in white. Xiaochen. The young man who walked out of the spatial crack was none other than Xiaochen. He did not expect Xiaochen to show up here at all. Zhongshan said with a serious expression. Xiao Qin's expression did not change when he heard Zhongshan. Zhongshan, it's time for you to die. Zhongshan's expression became extremely ugly when he heard Xiao Qin's words. Although Zhongshan was very fearful of Xiao Qin, the chosen who ranked fourth on the saint rankings, he wasn't afraid of Xiao Qin. Although Zhongshan's ranking on the saint rankings wasn't as high as Xiao Qin's, the difference wasn't large. Zhongshan had fought Gue Yintian before, and he was indeed no match for him. However, it was impossible for Gue Yintian to kill Zhongshan. As such, Zhongshan still did not think that Xiao Qin would be able to kill him. After all, at Zhongshan's level, unless one was as strong as Tian Mushi, it was impossible to kill him. At most, one would be able to severely injure him. He didn't think that Xiao Qin could kill him. Therefore, Zhongshan's expression darkened when he heard Xiao Qin's ruthless words. Xiao Qin, this has nothing to do with the human race. Are you sure you want to get involved? Zhongshan was fearful of Xiao Qin, but as the first chosen of the barbarian race, he still had his dignity. However, in the barbarian race camp, people like Tong Huang and the others who came from the North Star boundary with Xiao Qin looked at Xiao Qin with complicated expressions. They didn't want to be enemies with Xiao Qin, but they had no choice. In the central world, the interests of the race represented everything. Since they were born as barbarians, they didn't dare to Tong Huang. They had to fight for the barbarian race, unless they wanted to betray the race. Zhongshan didn't back down. Xiao Qin sneered. I'm not here to represent the human race. I'm here to avenge my wife. Xiao Qin didn't mean to represent the human race. He was here to avenge Tianyue. Zhongshan was furious when he heard this. The two races were at war. You want to avenge your wife just because I hurt her? Domineering, very domineering. At the same time, Zhongshan also felt a trace of contempt from Xiao Qin. Xiao Qin did not take Zhongshan seriously at all. Zhongshan was furious. He looked at Xiao Qin and said coldly, Xiao Qin, don't be too arrogant. I can't do it. What can you do to me today? Zhongshan didn't dare to say that he could defeat Xiao Qin, but he was confident that he could survive in Xiao Qin's hands. Xiao Qin sneered. Idiot. He knew what Zhongshan was thinking. Xiao Qin didn't wait for Zhongshan to reply. Instead, the dustless sword appeared in his hand. With the dustless sword in his hand, a sharp sword, intense sword from Xiao Qin's body. Xiao Qin didn't waste any time. He moved his feet and charged towards Zhongshan. Xiao Qin didn't take Zhongshan seriously because his strength couldn't be compared to Xiao Qin. Among the people of the same generation, only Long Yang, Tian Mushi, and the Divine Lord were qualified to be Xiao Qin's opponents. Tian Mushi smiled when she saw Xiao Qin attack. You're really impatient. Even though Tian Mushi said that, she still took a step forward and followed closely behind Xiao Qin, charging toward the berserkers. The battle broke out again, but this time, the Tian clan had Xiao Qin's help. Seeing Xiao Qin charging towards him without saying a word, Zhongshan shouted with an ugly expression, You're courting death. Kill. As he spoke, the two puppets also took the initiative to find Tian Mushi and Tian Fun. As for Zhongshan, he fought head-on with Xiao Qin. In the last battle, no one in the Sky Race was able to stop Zhongshan, so the Sky Race suffered a great loss. But this time, with the addition of Xiao Qin, Zhongshan obviously had no way to go on a killing spree without restraint. Of course, Tian Mushi and Tian Fun's situation didn't change. They were also entangled by the two puppets and couldn't deal with the barbarian clan warriors. Seeking collection, seeking monthly votes, seeking recommendations. Chapter 15-17. He thought that even if Xiao Qin defeated Gue Yintian, he would not be too strong. At most, he would be slightly stronger than Gue Yintian. Even if he was not a match for Xiao Qin, he should be able to protect himself. Thinking of this, Zhongshan became more confident. However, he did not expect that after exchanging a single blow with Xiao Qin, Zhongshan's thoughts were completely overturned. Strong. He was ridiculously strong. When Xiao Qin's sword fell, Zhongshan did not choose to dodge. Instead, he met the sword with a punch. When the two collided, Zhongshan was forced to take a few steps back before he could stop himself. Shock flashed in his eyes as he muttered to himself instinctively, "How is this possible?" After exchanging blows, the difference between the two was obvious. Xiao Chen's strength was far beyond Chong Shan's expectations. At this moment, Xiao Chun even gave Chong Shan a feeling similar to Tian Mushi and the other two. Was Xiao Chen's strength really comparable to Tian Mushi, Long Yang, and Sir God? He could not help but think. At the same time, Chong Shan's confidence collapsed with this blow. Ignoring Chong Shan's surprise, Xiao Chun held the dustless sword and slashed down again. The scorching sun sword was instantly displayed, not giving Chong Shan too much time to think. Xiao Chen's attack came again. Chong Shan's face darkened, but he still tried his best to resist. Flaming swords continued to slash at Chong Shan. Chong Shan could only defend himself tiredly. He could not find the slightest chance to fight back. As soon as the fight began, Chong Shan was completely suppressed by Xiao Chun. This scene was naturally seen by the other saints present. Apart from Tian Mushi, all the other holy sons present were shocked. Logically speaking, Xiao Chun was ranked 4th, while Chong Shan was ranked 8th. There was only a difference of 4 places between them, so there should not be much of a difference in strength. However, Chong Shan was clearly suppressed by Xiao Chun. How is this possible? Faced with this scene, the other saints quickly recalled the rumors about Xiao Chun. There was only one explanation for Xiao Chun being able to crush Chong Shan in such a comprehensive manner. Xiao Chen's strength had indeed reached the level of Tian Mushi and the other two. He had completely widened the gap between him and the other saints on the saint ranking. The rumors were true. Xiao Chun really did have the strength to contend with Tian Mushi and the other two. It could have been said that Xiao Chun had completely surpassed everyone before they knew it. Furthermore, he had left them far behind. He had become the first genius of the current generation after the Divine Lord, Tian Mushi, and Long Yang. He was the one who looked down on the entire saint ranking. Tian Fun's expression was complicated as he fought with the puppet. He remembered the first time he saw Xiao Chun. Xiao Chun was still an ant that he could casually crush. But now, Xiao Chun had already surpassed him. He could only helplessly look up at Xiao Chen's back. He felt complicated, but that was the truth. No matter what Tian Fun thought, Xiao Chun had already surpassed him. He did not care about the shock of the other saints around him. After a series of fierce attacks, many wounds appeared on Chong Shan's body. However, these wounds were not serious. With Chong Shan's physical body, they were at most superficial wounds. That kind of injury was not enough to threaten Chong Shan. However, who said that Xiao Chun had already used all of his strength before this? Xiao Chen's eyes flashed as the attack stopped. He then said faintly, "The game is over. Chong Shan, show me all your trump cards. Otherwise, you won't have a chance." As the first saint of the barbarian race, Chong Shan naturally had many life-saving trump cards. If Xiao Chun wanted to kill Chong Shan, he must first find a way to use up these life-saving trump cards. For example, the spirit tablets given by the great saints of the barbarian race. If these spirit tablets were not used up, Xiao Chun would not be able to kill Chong Shan. As soon as he finished speaking, the power of the sword domain gushed out from Xiao Chen's body. It immediately enveloped Xiao, Chun, and Chong Shan. Furthermore, Xiao Chen's current sword realm was clearly on a completely different level from the one he had used against Gui Min all those years ago. The sword realm that Xiao Chun had conjured at this moment was even more terrifying. When he fought against Gui Min, Xiao Chen's sword domain had broken through to the initial realm. Now, Xiao Chen's sword domain had obviously entered the advanced realm. Its power was even more terrifying. Chong Shan's eyes were filled with fear as he was enveloped by the advanced realm sword domain. He felt danger from Xiao Chun, the danger of death. Xiao Chen's strength was simply too unexpected. It was not at the same level as what Chong Shan had imagined. At this moment, the combat strength that Xiao Chen displayed was enough to kill Chong Shan. Since his life was in danger, Chong Shan naturally could not be as calm as before. At the same time, after Xiao Chun displayed the sword domain, he did not give Chong Shan any chance. He immediately displayed the absolute footwork and attacked. Xiao Chen's attack was merciless. As he fought with Xiao Chun, The pressure on Chongshan increased. The more they fought, the more frightened he became. After an hour, Chongshan had the intention to retreat. This was because his injuries were very serious. If he continued to fight, he would really die. With the intention to retreat, Chongshan naturally had to use his life-saving trump card. Seeing Chongshan take out a spirit tablet from his storage ring, Xiao Qin's eyes flashed coldly. He had been waiting for Chongshan to use his life-saving trump card. Without any hesitation, Xiao Qin also took out a spirit tablet from his storage ring. Seeing the two of them take out their tokens one after another, the surrounding warriors of the two clans did not hesitate and immediately fled in all directions. There was no doubt that the spirit tablets in Xiao Qin and Chongshan's hands were definitely made by the great sage. Its power was simply earth-shattering. If they continued to stay here, they would definitely be affected. At the same time, Xiao Qin and Chongshan also used the spirit tablets in their hands at the same time. With a loud bang, the power of the two spirit tablets collided violently and canceled each other out. Then, Xiao Qin and Chongshan began to use their trump cards. No one dared to get close to the two of them. After more than an hour, Chongshan had used up all his life-saving trump cards. At the same time, Xiao Qin was still entangled with Chongshan, not giving him any chance to escape. Seeing that Chongshan had no more life-saving trump cards, Xiao Qin said faintly, "Now, you can go on your way." Begging for collection, begging for monthly votes, begging for recommendation. Chapter 15:18. All of his life-saving trump cards had been used up, but he still could not get rid of Xiao Qin. Of course, Xiao Qin was also injured in the battle with Chongshan, but compared to Chongshan, Xiao Qin's condition was obviously much better. There was a flash of fear in his eyes. At this moment, Chongshan finally felt fear. Chongshan obviously did not expect that he would be killed by Xiao Qin because he had injured Tianyu. Xiao Qin was indeed a little overbearing, but so what? As long as it was someone with power, who wouldn't be overbearing? Moreover, Tianyu's injury did not seem to be a big deal, but in fact, it was extremely dangerous. Tianyu's heart was almost broken by Chongshan's punch. At that time, even a deity would not be able to save him. Therefore, Xiao Qin had such a strong killing intent towards Chongshan. In the end, Tianyu was not in any danger. Otherwise, Chongshan would not be the only one who would die. Holding the dustless sword, Xiao Qin took a step forward and instantly appeared in front of Chongshan. Looking at Xiao Qin in front of him, Chongshan looked like he had lost his soul. He did not beg for mercy, nor did he say any harsh words. In the face of death, Chongshan was silent. Seeing this, Xiao Qin's expression did not change. The dustless Jian Yi in his hand flashed, and then Chongshan's head flew up high. "Have a safe journey," Xiao Qin said flatly. Chongshan was dead. He was killed by Xiao Qin with a single strike. Following his death, the light screen of the saint ranking appeared in the sky, and Chongshan's name was directly removed from the saint ranking. Under the light screen of the saint ranking, the morale of the barbarian tribe fell to the extreme. On the other hand, the heavenly tribe was excited as if they had been injected with chicken blood. However, whether it was the heavenly tribe or the barbarian tribe, most of their eyes were locked on Xiao Qin. Xiao Qin was the one who killed Chongshan all by himself. It was believed that after today's battle, Xiao Qin's status in the hearts of everyone in the Central World would definitely be on par with Tian Mushi and the other two. The rumors about Xiao Qin would no longer remain as rumors. They would become the truth from that day onward. Xiao Qin did not care about the gazes of the warriors from the two clans. After killing Chongshan, he looked at Tian Mushi, who was not far away. He did not forget his agreement with Tian Mushi. Therefore, Xiao Qin moved his feet and went directly to Tian Mushi. The two of them worked together to destroy the two puppets. As Xiao Qin made his move, the pressure on Tian Mushi was greatly reduced. With a smile on her face, Tian Mushi teased, "You're so slow. Is it necessary to kill a Chongshan cultivator? If you had come any later, I wouldn't have been able to hold on." Tian Mushi was clearly joking. However, Xiao Qin unhappily replied, "Are you still going to fight or not? If not, I'm leaving." He did not have the slightest bit of pity for the fair sex. Hearing that, Tian Mushi curled her lips and took the initiative to attack the puppet before her. With Tian Mushi's power alone, it was naturally impossible for her to destroy the puppet. However, with Xiao Chen's help, things became much simpler. The two of them joined forces and switched from defense to offense. At the same time, they surrounded the puppet and bombarded it with terrifying attacks. Puppets were not like cultivators. They did not feel pain, did not know fear, and could not think. Therefore, in the face of Xiao Chun and Tian Mushi's attacks, the puppet had been using its body to resist. As Tian Mushi and Tian Mushi's attacks continued to fall, cracks finally appeared all over the puppet's body. Xiao Chun and Tian Mushi's attacks had exceeded the limits of what the puppet could withstand. Of course, it was still impossible to destroy the puppet in an instant. However, looking at the current situation, if Xiao Chun and Tian Mushi continued to attack, it was only a matter of time before the puppet was completely destroyed. After an hour of fierce attacks, the puppet, which was riddled with injuries, finally stopped moving. It fell straight from the sky. Xiao Chun took a deep breath as he watched the puppet being destroyed. "This thing is really difficult to deal with," he said. In order to destroy the puppet, Xiao Chun and Tian Mushi had consumed a lot of energy. It was too hard. The puppet's defense was ridiculously high. Tian Mushi smiled when she heard Xiao Chen's words. "Stop complaining. There's still one more." They had successfully destroyed a puppet, but that was not the end. The puppet that was fighting Tian Fun was still alive and kicking. However, compared to the previous puppet, this one was clearly much weaker. It was much easier to destroy it. They attacked at the same time again, and with Tian Fun's help, the puppet was also successfully destroyed in less than an hour. At this point on the barbarian side, Zhongshan was dead, and the two puppets were completely destroyed. Xiao Chen looked at Tian Mushi and said, "All right, what happens next has nothing to do with me." Since he had completed his agreement with Tian Mushi, what happened next had nothing to do with Xiao Chun. After saying that, Xiao Chun left the battlefield and flew towards the Sky Clan's encampment. Seeing Xiao Chun leave, Tian Mushi complained in dissatisfaction. What an ungentlemanly man. Xiao Chun did not have the slightest bit of tenderness towards Tian Mushi. Of course, Xiao Chun had never treated Tian Mushi as a woman, or rather, an ordinary woman, even though Tian Mushi was very beautiful. After Xiao Chun left, Tian Mushi and Tian Fun also took action one after another. Without Zhongshan and the two puppets, no one on the barbarian side could stop the two of them. For a moment, the two of them were like tigers that had entered a flock of sheep, crazily slaughtering. In front of Tian Mushi and Tian Fun, the many barbarian race warriors did not have the slightest ability to fight back. In the end, the barbarian race had no choice but to retreat. The result of this battle could be said to be unexpected by the barbarian race. Their original advantage was completely gone. Moreover, Zhongshan and the two puppets were destroyed. As a result, in the following battle, the barbarian race no longer had any advantage against the Sky Clan. It could even be said that they were completely suppressed by the Sky Clan. First of all, at the level of the Chosen on the Saint rankings, no one in the barbarian race could stop Tian Mushi and Tian Fun. Since no one could stop them, with Tian Mushi and Tian Fun's strength, it was definitely enough to cause heavy damage to the barbarian race. After the battle ended, the situation was completely reversed. The most important factor that caused all of this was Xiao Chun. If it was not for Xiao Chen's appearance, Zhongshan would definitely not have died, and the two puppets would not have been destroyed. Unfortunately, Xiao Chun came. Not only did he personally kill Zhongshan, he even cooperated with Tian Mushi to destroy the two puppets. Begging for collection, begging for monthly votes, begging for recommendations. Chapter 1519. The barbarian race didn't expect the outcome of the battle to be like this. Of course, the barbarian race also didn't expect that the reason for the reversal of the entire battle was because Zhongshan injured Tian Yu, which led to Xiao Chen's intervention. It was actually a very common thing for Tian Yu to be injured in the battle. Not to mention being injured, it wouldn't be strange even if she died directly. After all, even a quasi-sage great sovereign could die in the battle between the two races, let alone a saint like Tianyu. It should have been a very common thing, but because Tianyu was Xiao Chen's wife, it led to Xiao Chun personally taking action. In the end, not only were the two puppets destroyed, but Chongshan was also killed. The barbarian race took the initiative to retreat. After returning to their encampment, the 6 great saints of the barbarian race sat together with an extremely ugly expression. One of them even shouted angrily, "Damn it, it's all Xiao Chen's fault. He's courting death." The root cause of the barbarian race's defeat was Xiao Chun. If Xiao Chun had intervened, Chongshan wouldn't have been destroyed, and the 2 puppets wouldn't have been destroyed. In this way, the barbarian race would still have the advantage. He was furious, but there was nothing he could do. First of all, Xiao Chun was now in the encampment of the divine race, so the barbarian race couldn't do anything to him. Secondly, who among the younger generation of the barbarian race could be Xiao Chen's opponent? Could it be that they had to let the experts of the older generation take action? But who would they send for the experts of the older generation? With Xiao Chen's current battle strength, even a quasi-sage great sovereign wasn't sure that he could kill him. Therefore, if they wanted to take action against Xiao Chun, they would need at least a half-step great saint. But Xiao Chun was the saint of the divine race. If a half-step great saint took action against him, it would be exchanging life for life. Although losing a half-step great saint wasn't as serious as losing the great sage, it was enough to make the barbarian race's heart ache. He cursed angrily. Hearing this, another great saint of the brute race also said with an ugly expression, "Xiao Chun has grown up now. It's not easy to kill him. Moreover, if we kill Xiao Chun, the human race will definitely not let it go. We are already fighting with the Tian race. If we attract the human race at this time, it will not be easy to deal with them." If it was any other time, the barbarian clan would naturally not be afraid of the human clan, but now it was impossible. Right now, the barbarian clan was fighting with the Tian clan, and if they provoked the human clan to fight, the 2 clans would work together, and the barbarian clan would not be able to stop them. The 2 great saints of the barbarian tribe said one after another. Hearing this, the 3rd great saint of the barbarian tribe said, "Xiao Chun probably only took action to take revenge for Tianyu. Now that he has taken revenge, I don't think he will stay in the Tian clan's encampment for too long, so we don't have to worry about it for the time being. We should think about how to deal with the Tian clan." There was no need to pay attention to Xiao Chun for the time being. Moreover, Xiao Chun had already said that he did not represent the human clan this time. From the looks of it, the human clan should not want to get involved in the matter between the Tian clan and the barbarian clan. Therefore, compared to Xiao Chun, the barbarian clan should pay more attention to the Tian clan. After all, after this battle, the barbarian clan's advantage had disappeared, and they had even become weaker. First of all, no one on the barbarian clan side could contend against Tian Mushi and Tian Fun. While the barbarian clan was discussing what to do next at the same time in the Tian clan's encampment. After this victory, the morale of the Tian clan was high, and Tian Mushi also came to Tian Yu's residence. Seeing Xiao Chun by Tian Yu's side, Tian Mushi smiled and said, "I couldn't tell that our great Saint Xiao is quite gentle." After gradually getting familiar with Tian Mushi, Xiao Chen also discovered that this woman's personality was completely different from what it looked like on the surface. For those who weren't familiar with Tian Mushi, at first glance, they would definitely think that she was an extremely cold and aloof woman. However, as they gradually became familiar with her, they would discover that Tian Mushi's personality was actually very lively. Almost every time they met, she would tease Xiao Chun. Regarding this, Xiao Chun was too lazy to bicker with Tian Mushi. Hearing her words, Xiao Chun calmly said, "The matter has been resolved. Next, I will take Tian Yu back to the human clan." Tian Yu was injured, so Xiao Chun naturally couldn't keep her in the Tian clan. Moreover, the war between the Tian clan and the barbarian clan wasn't over yet. Xiao Chun didn't want Tian Yu to be in any danger, so bringing her back to the human clan was naturally the best choice. Tian Mushi wasn't surprised by Xiao Chen's words. She just smiled and said, "It's useless for you to say this to me. Go tell the palace lord and the others. If they agree, I naturally have no problems." After all, Tian Yu was still a disciple of the Heavenly Palace, so even if she was Shao Chen's wife, if she wanted to go to the human clan, she still needed the consent of the Heavenly King and the other great saints of the Tian clan. Hearing this, Shao Chen nodded and said, "All right, I'll go find the great saints of the Heavenly Palace in a while." Shao Chen definitely had to bring Tian Yu back to the human clan to recuperate. There was no room for negotiation. Hearing this, Tian Mushi didn't hesitate and sat down beside Shao Chen. She curled her lips and said, "Do as you wish." On the same day, Shao Chen found the great saints of the Heavenly Palace and told them that he was going to bring Tian Yu back to the human clan. Regarding this, the great saints of the Tian clan didn't make things difficult for him and readily agreed. This result was also within Shao Chen's expectations. After all, because of Shao Chen's actions this time, it could be said that the barbarian race's advantage had almost been completely wiped out. Without the two puppets and without Chongshan, the barbarian race would always be at a disadvantage in the following battle. In this way, it didn't matter whether Tian Yu was in the Heavenly Palace or not. It wouldn't have much of an impact on the battle situation. In this way, the great saints of the Tian clan naturally wouldn't refuse. Of course, the most important reason why the great saints of the Tian clan agreed was because of Shao Chen himself. This was because the strength that Shao Chen displayed in this battle was no weaker than Tian Mushi's. With such talent and strength, the Tian clan didn't recommend giving Shao Chen face. After all, this matter wouldn't affect the Tian clan in the slightest, so why not? Moreover, through Tian Yu, the Tian clan could also be on good terms with Shao Chen and even the human clan. This was also a good thing for the Tian clan. After all, the Tian clan was now facing the barbarian race with all their strength. It was naturally much better to have one more friend than one more enemy. Very smoothly obtaining the agreement of the great saints of the Tian clan, Shao Chen prepared to leave with Tian Yu early the next morning. Outside the Tian clan's encampment, Tian Mushi personally sent them off. Looking at Tian Yu, Tian Mushi smiled and said, "Junior sister, when the battle here is over, I will go to the human clan to see you. At that time, you must take good care of me." "Yes, senior sister, please be careful." Tian Yu nodded in response. It could be seen that Tian Yu and Tian Mushi had a good relationship, and Tian Mushi had indeed taken good care of Tian Yu. Tian Mushi smiled in response to Tian Yu's warning. She even cast an indifferent glance at Shao Chen. "Chongshan was killed by your husband. Tell me, who else in the barbarian race can threaten me now?" "Junior sister, don't worry. Please collect, please vote, please recommend." Chapter 15:20. Even Chongshan was dead. Who else in the younger generation of the barbarian race could threaten Tian Mushi? Of course, even if Chongshan wasn't dead, there was no need to worry about Tian Mushi's safety because she was a female evildoer. Hearing this, Shao Chen naturally ignored her and shrugged helplessly. Shao Chen said, "Don't pay attention to her. This woman won't die unless the great sage takes action. Let's go." Tian Mushi would definitely be fine. With his strength, a quasi-sage great venerable would definitely not be able to kill him. There might be hope for a half-step great sage, but there was absolutely no certainty. If they wanted to kill Tian Mushi, it would be more likely for the barbarian race to send at least one great sage or sovereign venerable to do it personally. However, in Shao Chen's opinion, using the great sage in exchange for Tian Mushi's life was impossible unless the barbarian race's great sage's head was stuck in a door. After saying that, Shao Chen pulled Tian Yu and left. His body had recovered a lot, but he was still very weak. Therefore, carrying Tian Yu and Shao Chen's speed was not fast. In addition, no one dared to find trouble with Shao Chen in the divine race's territory, so the two of them were not in a hurry. It was like going on a scenic tour. With Shao Chen by her side, Tian Yu's mood was naturally very happy. She seemed to have completely forgotten about the injuries on her body. Along the way, the two of them went to many famous scenic spots in the divine race's territory. It took them a full 10 days to leave the divine race's territory and enter the beast race's territory. Along the way, Xiao Chun naturally kept in touch with Qin Shuru and the other two women. After learning that nothing major had happened in the human race, Xiao Chun also prepared to make a trip to the dragon race. After entering the beast race's territory, Xiao Chun heard a piece of news. The relationship between the beast race and the divine race was getting increasingly tense. A war between the two races was estimated to break out during this period of time. In truth, both the god race and the beast race were among the strongest races in the central world. Compared to the human race, the ghost race, the celestial race, and the barbarian race, the beast race and the god race were even stronger. In fact, the relationship between the two clans had already become very tense. Small-scale conflicts had erupted from time to time in the past few months. The beast race and the god race probably couldn't hold themselves back any longer after this period of brewing. Xiao Chun naturally couldn't ignore the battle between the orcs and the gods, not only because of Long Qing, but also because of the alliance between the dragons and the Sun sect. In addition, the dragon clan had helped the human clan before, so it was even more impossible for Xiao Chun to stand by and do nothing. Therefore, after confirming that there was no problem with the human clan, Xiao Chun rushed directly to the human clan with Tianyu. If a war really broke out between the orcs and the god race, then Xiao Chun would also do his part. Xiao Chun was almost unobstructed when he went to the dragon clan. After all, many people in the dragon clan had seen Xiao Chun before. Even if they hadn't seen him, they had heard of Xiao Chun's name and knew about the relationship between Xiao Chun and the dragon clan. He arrived at the dragon clan without a hitch, and the person who welcomed Xiao Chun was none other than Long Yang. When he saw Xiao Chun, Long Yang immediately laughed loudly and said, "Haha, I really admire Brother Xiao Chun. You were so angry for a woman that you directly killed Chongshan of the barbarian race. Haha, I'm afraid Brother Xiao Chun doesn't know that this matter has already spread in the dragon clan. Many girls in the dragon clan regard Brother Xiao Chun as their idol." Long Yang had always been an outspoken person and had an extremely frivolous personality. Hearing this, Xiao Chun didn't mind and said with a smile, "I also admire Brother Long Yang. Now that the war is imminent, Brother Long Yang still has the leisure to joke with me." The war was imminent. Hearing this, Long Yang smiled and said, "I was worried before, but since Brother Xiao Chun is here, I reacted. If the two of us join forces, we will have a chance to kill that monarch god." Join forces with Xiao Chun to kill a monarch god. Hearing this, Xiao Chun shook his head with a bitter smile and didn't say anything. Although Xiao Chun now had the strength to stand shoulder to shoulder with Long Yang and the other two, Xiao Chun still didn't have much confidence in killing a monarch god. Not just a monarch god. Even if the opponent was Tian Mushi, Xiao Chun didn't think he could succeed. After all, at Xiao Chun's level, defeating and killing were two completely different concepts. If they joined forces with Long Yang, the two of them were indeed confident in defeating a monarch god. However, if they wanted to kill him, it wouldn't be so easy. Without saying much, Xiao Chun and Tianyu quickly arrived at Long Yang's residence and saw Long Qing. They hadn't seen Long Qing for a while. Naturally, Xiao Chun and Long Qing were very happy to see each other. They told Long Qing about Xin Yuanling. In fact, Long Qing had already heard about it. Now that Xin Yuanling had returned to the Xin Yuan clan, Xiao Chun and Long Qing were happy for him. Seeing Long Qing and Xiao Chun chatting, Long Yang said, "All right, you've been chatting for a long time. Isn't it time to drink? You only know how to drink all day. You won't die from drinking," Long Qing said grumpily when she heard this. Now that Long Qing was in front of him, Long Yang didn't have any temper at all. He couldn't help it. After all, he had an extremely biased father. Anyway, no matter what happened, as long as it was related to Long Qing, it was all Long Yang's fault. Of course, Long Yang also doted on Long Qing. He was also a peerless elder brother. It was rare for them to meet for a long time. At the same time, while drinking, Xiao Chun also asked Long Yang about the specific situation of the beast race and the god race. Faced with Xiao Chun's inquiry, Long Yang naturally didn't hide anything. He drank the wine in his cup in one gulp and said with a serious face, "It should be a war. The experts of the two races have already begun to gather at the border. It should be in the next 2 days." The war between the beast race and the god race was probably inevitable. Hearing this, Xiao Qin nodded and then looked at Long Yang with a serious face and said, "Since that's the case, I'll stay for a few more days. When the time comes, I can more or less help Brother Long Yang." "Haha, I never planned to let you go. It's rare for a peerless genius like you to come. How can I let you go just like that? This time, I must make that divine monarch suffer a great loss." "Haha," Long Yang said with a smile. Xiao Qian was only one person, but with Xiao Qin's combat strength, he definitely couldn't be ignored. First of all, as the chosen one on the saint ranking, Xiao Qin's status was very special. The experts of the older generation couldn't attack him unless they wanted to die together. Second, in the god race, except for the divine monarch, no one in the younger generation was Xiao Qin's match. Therefore, with Xiao Qin's help, it was definitely good news for the beast race. Begging for collection, begging for monthly votes, begging for recommendations. Chapter 1521. The pressure that Xiao Qian brought to the younger generation of the Shun clan was absolutely enormous. That night, the Dragon Emperor personally met with Xiao Qian. Looking at Xiao Qian, who still looked as young as ever, the Dragon Emperor felt a myriad of emotions. He remembered when he first met Xiao Qian, he was just an ordinary young man in the Central World. At that time, Xiao Qian wasn't even a chosen on the saint rankings. But now, in just a short time, Xiao Qian was ranked 4th on the saint rankings. His battle strength was on par with Long Yang and the other two. He was now recognized as the 4th peerless genius in the Central World. The Dragon Emperor smiled and said, "Xiao Qian, you really didn't disappoint." The Dragon Emperor had helped Xiao Qian in the past, mostly because of Long Qing. But now, Xiao Qian had grown up. Even without Long Qing, the Dragon Emperor felt that everything he had done was worth it. Hearing the Dragon Emperor's words, Xiao Qian replied in a neither servile nor overbearing manner, "Patriarch, you're exaggerating. I'm still a far cry from Brother Long Yang." "Haha. All right, let's cut the pleasantries. Long Yang has already told me everything. Xiao Qian, you're very considerate. On behalf of the entire Beast Clan, I'd like to thank you for your help," the Dragon Emperor said with a smile. Xiao Qian's arrival gave the Beast Clan an advantage in the younger generation of the God Clan. After all, the God Clan only had one divine sovereign. It was impossible for him to face Long Yang and Xiao Qian alone. In this way, no one in the younger generation of the God Clan could stop Xiao Qian. Therefore, Xiao Qian's arrival not only made the Dragon Emperor happy, but also made the other great saints of the Beast Clan happy. After chatting with Xiao Qian for a while, Xiao Qian excused himself and went back to rest. In truth, Xiao Qian didn't need to pay attention to the war between the orcs and the gods. All he needed to do was take action once the war broke out. The next morning, Feng Zhu brought a young man to beat up Long Yang and Xiao Qian. Feng Zhu and Xiao Qian knew each other, but Xiao Qian hadn't seen the young man before. After the introduction, Xiao Qian found out that the young man was the young patriarch of the Qilin clan, the 3rd genius of the Beast Clan. He was ranked 11th on the Saint rankings. Of course, he was now ranked 10th. Due to Chong Shan's death, the chosen on the Saint rankings behind him had all moved up a spot. As a result, the young master of the Qilin clan had moved up from 11th place to 10th place. His name was Qi Tao. After introducing the two of them, Feng Zhu looked at Qi Tao and said with a smile, "Qi Tao, you have to thank our holy son Xiao. If he didn't kill Chong Shan, you wouldn't be able to enter the top 10 of the Saint rankings." Qi Tao's personality was somewhat introverted, so in the face of Feng Zhu's teasing, he only smiled shyly and didn't say much. The few of them sat in the courtyard and chatted. Long Qing and Tian, you were naturally present as well. The atmosphere was very relaxed, and there were no signs that a war was about to break out. As they drank, Feng Zhu was very confident in this battle. With Xiao Qian's help and Long Yang's help, the two of them together were enough to sweep through the younger generation of the gods. He had high hopes for Xiao Qian, but Xiao Qian was very low-key. After all, some things were really hard to say now. Moreover, the Beast Clan and the God Clan were the strongest clans in the Central World. Both clans were very strong, and if they fought, it was really hard to tell who would win. As for the number of great holy emperors on both sides, the Beast race had 7 great holy emperors, while the Divine race had no way of determining the exact number. However, according to Dragon Emperor and the others' estimates, the Divine race should have as many as 8 great holy emperors. In terms of the number of the Great Sage, the God Clan might have one more than the Beast Clan. In this case, the Beast Clan was at a disadvantage. Of course, Dragon Emperor and the others also had to find a way to delay the Great Sage of the God Clan, but the situation was still not optimistic. At the level of the Great Sage, with the strength of Xiao Chun and Long Yang, there wasn't much possibility of them interfering because the two clans were not on the same level at all. In comparison, both clans had their own victories and losses. The God Clan had the advantage in the level of the Great Sage, while the Beast Clan had the advantage in the younger generation, especially in the level of the Saint ranking, because the Beast Clan had Xiao Chun. In the Central World, the Beast Clan had 2 of the 4 peerless geniuses, while the God Clan only had 1 divine monarch. It could be said that both clans had their own advantages. In this case, the outcome of this battle was indeed difficult to determine. After chatting for a while, Feng Zhu and Qi Tao got up to leave in the evening, and Xiao Chun continued to stay in the Dragon Clan. Nothing happened for 2 days, but on the 3rd day, the war between the Divine race and the Beastman race finally broke out. The God Clan was the first to attack, and the Beast Clan was the first to respond. It was already late at night, and Long Yang hurriedly found Xiao Chun, without the usual cheeky smile on his face, and simply said, "Brother Xiao Chun, the battle has begun." The battle between the God Clan and the Beast Clan had begun. Hearing this, Xiao Chun immediately nodded and said, "Let's go now." Long Yang nodded. After all, Tian Yu was still injured and could not fight at all. That night, Xiao Chun, Long Yang, Long Qing, Feng Zhu, Qi Tao, and a group of Beast Clan chosens rushed towards the battlefield, which was the border between the God Clan and the Beast Clan. Along the way, the chosens of the Beast Clan showed great curiosity toward Xiao Chun, the human chosens of the Beast Clan. They already knew that Xiao Chun's strength was comparable to Long Yang's, but it was the first time for many of the Beast Clan chosens to see Xiao Chun, especially the chosens of the Huang Yi clan and the Qilin clan. It did not take long for Xiao Chun and the others to arrive at the Beast Clan's encampment after one night. Last night, the two clans had already broken out in a huge battle. Of course, the first battle was mostly to test the waters, so both sides did not fight too fiercely, but there were still casualties. The Beast Clan had lost an estimated 5,000 cultivators, and the God Clan had lost a similar number. The first battle was only to test the waters, so the Great Sage and the chosens of the Saint rankings did not make a move. The strongest among them was only a half-step Great Sage. However, things are different now. After testing the waters, both sides were about to get serious. Xiao Chun and the other Beast Clan's chosens rushed to the battlefield. At the same time, in the God Clan's encampment, the Divine Lord had also arrived with a group of God Clan's chosens. The Great Sage and the chosens of the Saint rankings of the two clans had arrived one after the other. The following battle would probably not end so easily. Begging for collection, begging for monthly votes, begging for recommendations. Chapter 1522. In the God Tribe's encampment, Xiao Chun, Long Yang, and the other chosen on the Saint rankings were waiting for the battle to break out. Not long after, only a day, the God Tribe attacked again. This time, the chosen on the Saint rankings and the Great Sage of the God Tribe were all on the move. Just as the Beast Tribe had reported, the God Tribe had an 8-meter tall, the Great Sage, which was one more than the Beast Tribe. Seeing this, a cold glint flashed across the eyes of the Dragon Emperor and the other Beast Tribe Great Sages. Although they had a way to stall the Great Sage of the God Tribe, they would have to pay a hefty price. Warriors from both sides stood in the air, facing each other. The Great Sage leading the two sides were only a dozen meters away from each other. Looking at the Dragon Emperor, The great sage leading the god tribe laughed coldly. Dragon Emperor, hand over the heavenly law stone. Don't make any unnecessary resistance. It's useless. If you want to fight, then let's fight. Cut the crap. The Dragon Emperor said without giving the Supreme Saint any face. As soon as he finished speaking, without waiting for the Supreme Saint from the Shin clan to reply, the storage ring on the Dragon Emperor's hand flashed, and a palm-sized dragon bone appeared in his hand. With a flick of his hand, the dragon bone shot towards one of the great sages. At the same time, the dragon bone suddenly grew in size, reaching several hundred meters in an instant. With a deafening dragon roar, the dragon bone seemed to have come alive. Before anyone could react, the bone dragon had dragged the great sage of the god tribe into the void, and a great battle broke out. The bone dragon was the secret treasure of the dragon tribe. It was said to be the skeleton of the ancestral dragon. After so many years of continuous nurturing by the dragon tribe, although it did not have spiritual intelligence, its combat strength was preserved. They could treat the bone dragon as the great sage, which was the source of the beast tribe's confidence. The great sage was one less than the god tribe, but the beast tribe had the ancient dragon, which could make up for the difference. The bone dragon immediately attacked, and the Dragon Emperor also shouted kill. Immediately after, the experts from the two clans began to fight in the void. The Dragon Emperor had a domineering personality to begin with. In the face of the divine race's attack, the Dragon Emperor naturally wouldn't surrender. Therefore, without giving the great sage of the divine race a chance to speak, the Dragon Emperor had already attacked. A great battle broke out between the experts of the two clans, and the cultivators below them naturally did the same. Under the leadership of the chosens of the two clans, millions of cultivators from the two clans clashed. Naturally, Long Yang's opponent was the divine monarch. In fact, the two of them were very familiar with each other. They had fought before more than once. In terms of strength, there was almost no difference between the two. Although the Divine Lord might be a little bit stronger than Long Yang, this little bit of difference was almost negligible. It was enough to guarantee Long Yang's victory. He might not even be able to suppress Long Yang. Long Yang's first move was a killing move. Seeing this, the Divine Lord had no intention of dodging. He struck out with his palm, and golden light gathered into a palm print that collided with Long Yang's fist. The fist and palm collided. In the end, no one could do anything to the other, and they canceled each other out. After the collision, no one gained an advantage. The Divine Lord chuckled and said, Long Yang, we can't determine the winner between the two of us. Why don't you persuade your father to hand over the heavenly law stone? This way, we won't have to continue fighting. Hand over the heavenly law stone? Divine Lord, are you dreaming? Yes, we can't determine the winner between the two of us, but what if there's another person? Long Yang laughed disdainfully when he heard the Divine Lord's words. It could be said that he already knew the other party's background. However, as Long Yang's voice fell, Shao Chun appeared beside him. Seeing Shao Chun appear, the Divine Lord's eyes flashed with a strange look. Facing Long Yang alone, the Divine Lord was not afraid at all. The two of them could not do anything to each other. However, with the addition of Shao Chun, the Divine Lord felt the pressure in his heart. Although he had never fought with Shao Chun before, judging from the recent events, Shao Chun's strength was really not to be underestimated. He should have reached the same level as the three of them. When Shao Chun appeared, Long Yang smiled and said, Divine Lord, I'll give you a chance. Hand over the heavenly law stone and we'll forget about this matter. You should know that with your strength alone, I'm afraid that you can't deal with me and Brother Shao Chun together. He directly returned the Divine Lord's words. Hearing this, a strange look flashed across the Divine Lord's eyes. He looked at Shao Chun and calmed down again. How will we know if we don't fight? Besides, the rumors about Shao Chun in the outside world have been very interesting recently. I also want to see if you, Shao Chun, are able to compete with the three of us, as the rumors say. Shao Chun's appearance had indeed surprised the Divine Lord. However, it was obviously impossible for the Divine Lord to stop. Hearing this, Shao Chun was expressionless. However, Long Yang sneered and said, Since you're courting death, you can't blame others. With that, Long Yang took the initiative to attack. Xiao Chen followed closely behind. With a thought, the dustless sword instantly appeared in his hand. With the dustless sword in hand, Xiao Chen and Long Yang attacked the Divine Lord from both sides. Seeing this, a golden light suddenly shot up from the Divine Lord's body. His aura also completely erupted. Like Xiao Chen, the Divine Lord's cultivation had also reached the great perfection of the Sage realm. Since their cultivations were the same, Xiao Chen was naturally not afraid of the Divine Lord. With a slash of his sword, the scorching sun swordsmanship was instantly displayed. Seeing this, the Divine Lord snorted coldly. Golden light shone from his hand, and he directly displayed the Divine Lord's superpower. The blade of the sword and the palm print fiercely collided. Surprisingly, Xiao Chen's blade of the sword was not at a disadvantage in the battle between the Divine Lord and himself. Their attacks could be said to be evenly matched. It was only one blow, but the Divine Lord could already be sure that the rumors about Xiao Chen were not exaggerated. Xiao Chen was indeed very strong. At least, he was so strong that even the Divine Lord could not ignore him. He indeed had the strength of the three of them. In this way, the Divine Lord could not be underestimated if he wanted to deal with Xiao Chen and Long Yang alone. This was because both Xiao Chen and Long Yang had fighting capabilities that were comparable to the Divine Lord's. Now that the two of them had joined forces, the Divine Lord was afraid that he would not be able to withstand their attacks. Xiao Chen's sword fell. On the other side, Long Yang did not stay idle. He immediately threw out a punch. The shadow of the punch went straight for the Divine Lord's abdomen. Seeing this, the Divine Lord did not hesitate. He immediately took out a defensive talisman to protect himself. Then, Long Yang's punch hit the talisman hard. Suddenly, the talisman was broken. However, in the end, it still managed to block Long Yang's attack. Begging for collection, begging for monthly votes, begging for recommendations. Chapter 1523. He had no choice but to use a talisman to defend himself. Even though he was the Sir God, he was powerless against both Xiao Chen and Long Yang at the same time. If the Sir God had not used a talisman to defend himself, he would not have been able to block Long Yang's punch. It was impossible for him to block both Xiao Chen and Long Yang's attacks at the same time. Hence, the Sir God could only block one of them with his own strength, while the other could only rely on a talisman. Long Yang was not discouraged at all when his attack was blocked. Instead, he smiled and said, "Not bad. However, how many of these top sage level talismans do you have on you? You can't possibly have an endless supply of them." The Sir God naturally did not have an endless supply of talismans. A look of helplessness flashed across the Sir God's eyes when he heard Long Yang's words. At the same time, his and Xiao Chen's attacks dissipated at the same time after an intense confrontation. After blocking Xiao Chen's attack, the Sir God ignored Long Yang and said to Xiao Chen, the war between the God tribe and the Beast tribe has nothing to do with you, right? If you stop, I'll owe you a favor. How about that?" The Sir God was decisive. He knew that he was no match for Long Yang, so he spoke directly. However, Xiao Chen replied without hesitation when he heard his words. "Don't you know that the Dragon Tribe and the Taiyang sect have formed an alliance? Hence, this war has something to do with me. Sir God, why don't you do as Long Yang says and hand over the God Tribe's heavenly Tao stone? This way, the three of us won't have to fight anymore. We can even find a place to drink. Wouldn't that be better?" The Sir God naturally could not agree to hand over the heavenly Tao stone. Hence, when he heard Xiao Chen's words, the Sir God's eyes were filled with helplessness and determination. He then replied calmly, "In that case, there's no point in talking anymore. Let's just fight." "Sir God, you have to think carefully. Someone will die." Long Yang smiled when he heard this. Facing the two of them at the same time would indeed result in death. Hearing Long Yang's words, the Divine Lord smiled faintly. "There's no need for harsh words. Let's just fight." As he spoke, an inexplicable power of laws erupted from the Sir God's body. Xiao Chen was very unfamiliar with this power of laws, but Long Yang was extremely familiar with it. This was because he and the Sir God had been rivals for a long time. It could be said that he knew exactly what methods the Sir God had. The law of space. You're already using your trump card? Long Yang said with a faint smile as he looked at the divine sovereign. Spatial dimension laws were known as one of the strongest nomological powers in the world. It was considered the pinnacle among level 3 laws, and what a divine lord comprehended was spatial dimension laws. As soon as the space law appeared, the divine lord's body seemed to merge with space. Long Yang's punch directly passed through the divine lord's body without causing any damage. This was the terrifying aspect of the law of space. Not only could one become one with space, but one could even teleport. With just a thought, one could instantly break through the limits of space and appear anywhere. It had to be clear that teleportation had nothing to do with speed. It was the simplest and most brutal way to transcend space. This was the power of the law of space. Long Yang was not surprised that his attack did not hit. Long Yang had experienced the Divine Lord's law of space many times. A terrifying power of laws erupted from his body as he fully unleashed the law of air. Long Yang had comprehended the law of air. Although the Divine Lord had become one with space, air was everywhere. It was impossible for the Divine Lord not to breathe, right? As long as there was air, Long Yang's law of air could attack the Divine Lord. Both of them unleashed their own power of laws. The two great powers of laws, the law of air and the law of space, constantly clashed. On the other side, Xiao Chun had to admit that in terms of the power of laws, Xiao Chun had an obvious shortcoming. After all, Xiao Chun had yet to comprehend a level 3 law. In terms of the power of laws, Xiao Chun was completely suppressed by the Divine Lord and Long Yang. However, the power of laws could not be compared at all. However, this did not mean that Xiao Chun did not have any means to fight against the Divine Lord. The great success, Sword Realm, gushed out and instantly enveloped the three of them. When the realm appeared, the space within it became extremely unstable. The power of the Sword Realm, which was intentionally manipulated, attacked the surrounding space continuously. The space became unstable, and the Divine Lord could no longer maintain the state of being one with the surrounding space. In this way, Xiao Chen's attacks could be focused on the Divine Lord. Using the Sword Realm to break the law of space was indeed a way. However, it required a high level of the Sword Realm. It was also because Xiao Chen's Sword Realm had broken through to the Great Success stage. Otherwise, a small success stage Sword Realm would not be able to break the Divine Lord's law of space. Long Yang had the law of air, and Xiao Chun had the Sword Realm. In this way, the Divine Lord's law of space had little effect on the two of them. The pressure was really great. Facing Xiao Chun and Long Yang at the same time, the Divine Lord was still at a complete disadvantage even though he had already used the law of space. Long Yang's law of air was all-pervasive, and Xiao Chen's Sword Realm was extremely sharp. The Divine Lord could not stabilize the surrounding space at all. The dustless sword slashed down, and the scorching sun swordsmanship instantly exploded. The Divine Lord could only use teleport to dodge the incoming sword. It was impossible for him to fight Long Yang and Xiao Chen head-on. The result would only be that he, the Divine Lord, would be seriously injured. The Divine Lord could still hold on by relying on the teleport ability of the law of space. However, to put it bluntly, he was just running away. He was running in all directions, constantly dodging Xiao Chun and Long Yang's attacks. In fact, with the ability of the law of space, if the Divine Lord wanted to run away, Long Yang and Xiao Chun would not be able to catch up. The Divine Lord could appear tens of thousands of miles away in an instant with a teleport. In this way, Xiao Chun and Long Yang really could not do anything. However, the current situation did not allow the Divine Lord to escape alone. This was because he could escape, but what about the remaining Sacred Clan warriors and the other sacred sons of the Shun clan? In the face of Long Yang and Xiao Chun, only the Divine Lords of the Shun clan could contend with them. Once the Divine Lords ran away, The remaining warriors of the Shun clan would face the merciless slaughter of the two. It was completely impossible for them to escape. As such, the Divine Lord could only try his best to tangle with the two of them. He did not hope to defeat the two of them. He did not even hope to gain any advantage, because it was simply impossible. What the Divine Lord wanted now was to delay Xiao, Chun, and Long Yang, so that they would not attack the other Shun clan warriors. Attacks fell one after another. The Divine Lord dodged each time by a hair's breadth. In response, Long Yang laughed. The law of space is indeed not bad. However, Divine Lord, how many times can you use teleport like this? It can't be unlimited, right? When you are exhausted, I'm afraid that Brother Xiao Chun and I will really be able to kill you here. Begging for collection, begging for monthly votes, begging for recommendations. Chapter 1524. It was impossible for the space teleportation to be unlimited. In fact, every time the space teleportation was used, the Sir God would use up a lot of energy. However, the Sir God had no other choice in the current situation. Facing Long Yang and Xiao Chun at the same time, the Sir God had no other choice but to use the space teleportation to avoid them. There was no need to even think about confronting Xiao Chun and Long Yang head-on. After all, there was no possibility of that happening. The only thing he could do was to evade the attacks. It was impossible for him to face the two head-on. Furthermore, it was fortunate that the Divine Lord had comprehended the laws of space and was able to perform spatial teleportation. Otherwise, he would have been severely injured by Xiao Chun and Yi Futian. The three of them were not very different in terms of power. It was indeed too difficult for him to fight the two of them alone. The Sir God knew this very well. However, even with the space teleportation, there would be a time when he would run out of energy. Once he ran out of energy, the Sir God would be in real danger. The Sir God's expression did not change much when he heard Long Yang's words. However, his heart was unusually heavy as he looked at Xiao Chun. This was all because of Xiao Chun. If Xiao Chun had not appeared, the Sir God would not have been afraid of Long Yang at all. The two of them could have fought, and he would not have ended up in such a situation. There would definitely be a time when he would run out of energy. Therefore, after fighting with Xiao Chun and Long Yang for about 15 minutes, the Sir God did not hesitate and immediately chose to retreat. It was impossible for him to win. As such, there was no point in continuing the fight. Moreover, if he continued the fight, he might be killed by the two of them if he was the slightest bit careless, just as Long Yang had said. The Sir God retreated immediately. At the same time, many warriors from the Heavenly Clan also retreated. Since the Divine Lord had been defeated, it was even more impossible for the others to be a match for Xiao Chun and Long Yang. As the warriors of the God Clan outside chose to retreat, the warriors of the God Clan in the Void no longer wanted to fight and quickly chose to withdraw as well. In the first head-on confrontation, the Beast Clan had won with the help of Xiao Chun. Of course, due to the Lord God's decisiveness, the God race did not suffer too many losses in this battle. However, victory still belonged to the Beast race. Both Xiao Chun and Long Yang were not surprised by the outcome of the battle after they returned to the Beast tribe's encampment. It was to be expected. The two of them had teamed up against the Divine Lord. If they still could not defeat him, then Xiao Chun and Long Yang might as well buy a block of tofu and kill themselves. Sigh, what a pity that I didn't manage to kill the Divine Sovereign. Long Yang sighed in disappointment when he returned to his residence. Upon hearing his words, Xiao Chun, who was at the side, said snappily, "You're thinking too much." Long Yang was indeed overthinking things. It was not difficult for the two of them to defeat the Divine Monarch together, but it would be difficult to kill him. Therefore, they had already achieved their goal by defeating the Divine Monarch in this battle. The Beast race was very satisfied with the outcome of the battle. However, the Celestial race was not the same. They had lost the first battle. At this moment, the 8 great sages of the Celestial race, as well as the Celestial race's holy sons, sat together and looked at the Celestial race. Divine Monarch, is Xiao Chun of the human race really that strong? He's not much weaker than me. Even if it's a one-on-one battle, I don't have absolute confidence that I could defeat Shao Chun. At most, I would have the upper hand. The divine monarch replied, faintly, when he heard the great sage of the god race's words. The main reason why they had lost the first battle was because of Shao Chun. Upon hearing the divine monarch's words, the great sage of the god race fell silent. Then, another great sage of the god race beside him spoke up. We have to think of a way to deal with Shao Chun. With Shao Chun taking action, the divine monarch will have to face him and Long Yang. This way, the situation will be very unfavorable for us. Shao Chun was the key. They had to think of a way to prevent Shao Chun from taking action. Or rather, they had to make him ignore this matter. Otherwise, the god race would always be at a disadvantage in the following battle. Everyone present nodded in agreement when they heard the great sage's question. However, at this moment, the divine monarch spoke up faintly. Actually, there's no need to worry. I believe that it won't be long before Shao Chun rushes back to the human race. There was no need to deliberately do anything to Shao Chun because he would not stay with the beast race for long. At first, no one reacted to the divine monarch's words. However, the great sage of the god race who had spoken earlier suddenly spoke up. You mean the ghost race? The divine monarch nodded gently. Now that the war between the beast race and the god race had erupted, with the relationship between the ghost race and the human race, the ghost race naturally would not let go of this opportunity. Previously, the ghost race had suffered a crushing defeat because of the dragon race's assistance. However, this time, the beast race and the god race had already started an all-out war. The dragon race naturally did not have the energy to support the human race. As a result, the ghost race would definitely take action. Once the ghost race invaded the human race again, as the first holy son of the human race, Shao Chun clearly would not allow the human race to retreat and continue to interfere in the war between the beast race and the god race. As a result, in the divine monarch's opinion, there was no need to deliberately target Shao Chun. When the time came, he would naturally leave. Moreover, he would have no choice but to leave. Hearing the divine monarch's words, the great saints of the god race and the other holy sons all nodded in agreement. Indeed, the ghost race would not let go of this excellent opportunity. The divine monarch's guess was correct. After the news of the war between the beast race and the god race spread, Gui Mu and the other great saints of the ghost race gathered in the Ghost King Palace. Apart from the 5 of them, there was one more person this time. This person was the former patriarch of the Xianyuan clan, one of the 3, the great sage of the human race, Xianyuan Wudi. Xianyuan Wudi also appeared. As soon as he arrived, Gui Mu directly looked at Xianyuan Wudi and said, Xianyuan Wudi, can the ghost race trust you? What do you think? Xianyuan Wudi did not answer. Instead, he asked with a calm expression and an indifferent tone. Hearing Xianyuan Wudi's words, Gui Fen smiled faintly. These days, Xianyuan Wudi's performance was really good. Moreover, Gui Fen and the others had tested him many times, but Xianyuan Wudi didn't show any abnormal behavior. In this way, Gui Mu actually had a basic trust in Xianyuan Wudi. Gui Mu did not ask Xianyuan Wudi any further. Hearing his words, Gui Mu smiled and said, well, the war between the god race and the beast race has begun. I think everyone has heard the news. Now that the dragon race can't even take care of themselves and have no energy to help the human race, I think it's time for the ghost race to make a move. The ghost race did not let go of this opportunity. Taking advantage of the war between the god race and the beast race, the ghost race planned to attack the human race once again. This time, the dragon race would definitely not come to support them. In this way, the ghost race would have a much greater chance of winning. Moreover, with the addition of the great sage Xianyuan Wudi, the ghost race's strength had increased. Seeking collection, seeking monthly votes, seeking recommendation. Chapter 1525. Just as the Divine Lord had guessed, the ghost race did not intend to let go of this opportunity. They wanted to attack the human race again. Hearing Gui Mu's words, the other 4 great saints of the ghost race did not object. As for Xianyuan Wudi, he would not say anything. After all, he wanted to take revenge on the human race. Everyone agreed. However, Gui Shuang looked at Xianyuan Wudi and sneered, "Brother Wudi, you're really going to attack the human race in this battle. You'll know when the time comes," Xianyuan Wudi said indifferently. As a member of the ghost race, Xianyuan Wudi's status was actually very awkward. Even though Gui Mu and the others had given Xianyuan Wudi a high status, it was all in vain. In fact, Xianyuan Wudi had no authority. Not only that, but Xianyuan Wudi's actions were also under the surveillance of the ghost race. After all, Xianyuan Wudi was not a member of the ghost race. In that case, Gui Mu and the others obviously would not hand over authority to an outsider. Gui Mu and the others' idea was very simple. They wanted to treat Xianyuan Wudi as a saber with great lethality. However, other than that, they would not hand over any authority to Xianyuan Wudi. The ghost race had already made their decision. Moreover, they acted very quickly. In just 2 days, the ghost race had once again invaded the human race's territory. The news of the ghost race launching another attack on the human race quickly reached Xiao Chun. In the beast race's encampment, Xiao Chun did not have much of a change in his expression when he received the news of the ghost race's sudden attack. It was as if he had already guessed it. Looking at Long Yang and Long Qing, Xiao Chun said indifferently, "As expected, the ghost race has made their move. I've already said that this group of cunning fellows would not let go of such a good opportunity," Long Yang replied with a smile. It was normal for the ghost race to launch another attack on the human race because the dragon race could not get away. Hearing this, Xiao Chun smiled and said, "Indeed. Sai, it's just a pity that we weren't able to kill that monarch god. Brother Xiao Chun, once you leave, I'll be under a lot of pressure alone," Long Yang said with a smile. If the ghost race attacked again, Xiao Chun would have to rush back to the human race. As a result, Long Yang would have to deal with the divine monarchs alone. Of course, Long Yang was not afraid. However, if it was a one-on-one fight, it would be very difficult. In the face of Long Yang's complaints, Xiao Chun smiled and said, "I'll come again once I've dealt with the ghost race. Furthermore, I believe that Brother Long Yang isn't afraid of a divine sovereign." Long Yang was indeed not afraid of a divine lord. Even if it was a one-on-one, a divine lord would not be able to do anything to Long Yang. He was only afraid of trouble. Without wasting any time, Xiao Chun hurried to the dragon tribe on the same day. After picking up Tianyu, the two of them headed straight to the human tribe. The beast tribe did not hide the news of Xiao Chun's departure. Naturally, the god tribe also knew about it. Regarding this, the god tribe secretly heaved a sigh of relief. Without Xiao Chun, the situation would be much better. At least, the divine monarchs would not be helpless. On the second day after Xiao Chun's departure, the god tribe and the beast tribe once again broke out into a war. This time, it was different from before. The two tribes could be said to be in a chaotic battle. It was especially so for the divine monarchs and Long Yang. The two of them were locked in a fierce battle. After an entire day and night of intense battle, neither of them had a clear winner. However, their injuries were comparable. It was a lose-lose situation. In the end, both tribes suffered losses and could only stop the battle temporarily. Before leaving, Long Yang had a trace of blood at the corner of his mouth, and his face was pale. Looking at the divine monarchs, Long Yang said with a bitter smile, "I say, do you really want to risk your life? Without Xiao Chun around, do you really want to kill me so badly?" The battle between the divine monarchs had indeed caused Long Yang to complain endlessly. The divine monarch's attitude was as though they would not rest until one of them was dead. This made Long Yang feel rather depressed. Hearing Long Yang's words, the divine monarchs only said indifferently, "My heart is filled with anger. Naturally, my attacks are a little heavier. Furthermore, I never thought of killing you. I was just venting my anger." The divine monarchs had never thought that he could kill Long Yang. This was something that the divine monarchs knew very well. It was just like how Long Yang had never thought that he could kill the divine monarchs with his own strength. The reason why the divine monarchs had been so ruthless and had fought with their lives on the line was because the divine monarch's heart was filled with anger. Previously, The divine monarchs had been besieged by Long Yang and Xiao Chun. This time, Xiao Chun had left, and only Long Yang was left. The divine monarchs naturally wanted to vent his anger. Hearing the divine monarch's words, Long Yang was helpless. He then scolded in annoyance. "So I'm a punching bag? Sigh. The world's morals are degenerating day by day." With that, Long Yang turned around and flew towards the beast race's encampment. Seeing this, the divine monarchs also turned around and flew towards the divine race's encampment in the opposite direction. In this battle, the beast race and the divine race could be said to be evenly matched. Both sides had suffered many casualties. The battle between the beast race and the divine race was intense. On the other side of the Sky Barbarian mountain range, although Zhongshan had been killed by Xiao Chun and the two puppets had been destroyed, the barbarian race still had no intention of surrendering. If the barbarian race did not choose to surrender, the battle between the two races would naturally not end. As such, the Sky Barbarian mountain range was naturally in full swing. The beast race and the divine race and the barbarian race, in addition to the human race and the ghost race, the entire central world was in a mess. The few powerful races had almost all started a war with each other. The only race that remained calm was the demon race. Of course, this was only talking about the powerful races. For a small race like the night race, they did not even have the right to step on this stage. When the War of the 100 Races began, the only thing a small race like the night race could do was to collect heavenly Tao stones and hand them over to the powerful races in order to seek stability. The entire central world was in complete chaos. There were terrifying battles everywhere, and the powerhouses of the various races were using all their means. At this time, in the Wanha mountain range in the human race's territory, the battle between the human race and the ghost race had broken out here. At this time, the location of the battle between the two races was still chosen. The encampment that the human race had built previously was not demolished, so it came in handy. At this time, Yin Yangzi, Xing Zhantian, and Xin Yuan Songtao were gathered together. The ghost race's attack was not unexpected. With a calm expression, Xing Zhantian took the lead and asked, "Where is Xiao Chun? When will he arrive?" Previously, Xiao Chun was in the beast race, so he did not rush to the Wanha mountain range with the powerhouses of the human race. Hearing Xing Zhantian's words, Yin Yangzi replied, "He's already in Clear Sky City. He'll arrive tomorrow at the latest." He would arrive at the Wanha mountain range tomorrow. Hearing that, Xing Zhantian nodded lightly, begging for collection, begging for monthly votes, begging for recommendations. Chapter 1526. The human race had long been on guard against the ghost race. Hence, the moment the ghost race made a move, the human race quickly set up a defensive line in the Wanha mountain range. They still planned to control the battle within the Wanha mountain range and prevent it from affecting other parts of the human race. The ghost race did not find the human race's reaction strange. After all, given the relationship between the two races, it would be strange if the human race did not guard against the ghost race. Both sides gathered their forces in the Wanha mountain range. At the same time, Xiao Chun, who had successfully returned to Clear Sky City, left Tianyu in Clear Sky City. Tianyu's injuries were still not healed, so she was naturally unable to fight. Although Tianyu strongly requested to go to the Wanha mountain range with Xiao Chun refused to give in at all. Qin Shiru and the other two girls, Chen Yu, Yun Kunyo, and the other saints of the human race had already rushed to the Wanha mountain range. Xiao Chun handed Tianyu to Qin Yao and Qin Luo to take care of. As for Xiao Chun himself, he rushed to the Wanha mountain range overnight. There was a teleportation formation directly connected to the Wanha mountain range. Hence, Xiao Chun arrived at the human race's encampment in the Wanha mountain range that night. Everyone heaved a sigh of relief when they saw that Xiao Chun had returned safely, especially Qin Shiru and the other two girls. It was a very similar scene. After arriving at the Wanha mountain range, Xiao Chun felt that everything was very familiar. That was right. After all, the human race and the ghost race had just broken out not too long ago. However, Compared to the previous time, the human race's situation seemed to be even more dangerous this time, because they had the support of the dragon race. This time, however, there was no support. The dragon race no longer had the energy to support the human race because of the war between the beast race and the god race. After a night of silence, the ghost race launched a large-scale attack early the next morning as expected. The human race's experts all soared into the sky. The experts of the two races were still facing each other in the sky above the Wana mountain range. Xiaoqun saw Gue Yintian once again. The last time he was defeated, Gue Yintian escaped with heavy injuries. Since then, Gue Yintian had not shown himself. But now, it seemed that after this period of recuperation, Gue Yintian's injuries should have healed. However, this did not change anything, because Gue Yintian was still no match for Xiaoqun. It could even be said that the gap between the two of them was constantly widening. Of course, the attention of the humans was not on Gue Yintian, including Xiaoqun. He merely glanced at Gue Yintian before shifting his gaze to the figure standing with Gue Fun and the other great saints from the Ghost Clan. Xianyuan Wudi was once the patriarch of the Xianyuan clan and one of the three, the great sage of the human clan. But now, he had betrayed his clan and sided with the Ghost Clan. Facing Xianyuan Wudi again, the eyes of many human warriors flickered with extreme anger, especially the warriors of the Xianyuan clan. Besides anger, there was also a trace of humiliation. Xianyuan Wudi was the patriarch of the Xianyuan clan, but he had betrayed his clan now. This was a form of humiliation for many Xianyuan warriors. After all, as the patriarch, Xianyuan Wudi's every action represented the Xianyuan clan. In the Central World, betrayal was always the most despicable thing. In the end, an elder of the Xianyuan clan stepped forward and shouted at Xianyuan Wudi with a face full of anger. "You're a traitor. Xianyuan Wudi, you really are the scum of my Xianyuan clan. How can you face the ancestors of my Xianyuan clan by doing this? That's right. Xianyuan Wudi, you are the disgrace of my Xianyuan clan." Along with the elder's words, all the other cultivators of Xianyuan clan instantly started cursing furiously. However, Xianyuan Wudi didn't say a single word in the face of their curses. His expression was calm, as if he hadn't heard a single thing. On the other hand, a faint smile appeared on Gue Mu's face. He could not see the slightest falsehood on the faces of the Xianyuan warriors. They truly hated Xianyuan Wudi and felt shame for him. The more the Xianyuan warriors cursed, the happier Gue Mu was, because this meant that Xianyuan Wudi had truly broken off with the human race. There was no chance for him to return, and the Ghost Clan would trust Xianyuan Wudi even more. With a smile on his face, Gue Mu said indifferently, "Noisy. Where I do a bunch of ants have to shout in front of me." As he spoke, a towering aura erupted from Gue Mu. A terrifying pressure swept over the crowd like a tide. However, at the same time, Yinyangzi also erupted with his own aura to block Gue Mu's pressure for the crowd. The great sage and Gue Mu made their moves one after another. The pressure was offset by each other. At this moment, Gue Mu chuckled and said, "As the saying goes, a fine bird chooses a tree to nest in. A bunch of idiots. The human race is about to be finished, and you're still here acting recklessly. Brother Wudi is a smart person. Joining my Ghost Clan is the best choice. Of course, if you're willing, my Ghost Clan can also accept you. Moreover, I can guarantee that what you'll obtain in the Ghost Clan will be far more than what you'll obtain in the human clan." Gue Mu did not recommend using Xianyuan Wudi to buy people's hearts. Unfortunately, no one in the human race was moved by his words. After all, no one would choose to betray the human race unless they had no other choice. Seeing that no one responded to him, Gue Mu did not care. At this moment, Xianyuan Songtao said indifferently, "Gue Mu, save it. Do you think that all human warriors are as shameless as Xianyuan Wudi?" Xianyuan Songtao, TSK. You're really an old fart. After so many years, you're still alive. This really surprises me. However, I'm afraid that you'll really die here today. Hearing Xin Yuan Songtao's words, a supreme elder of the Ghost King Palace sneered. He and Xin Yuan Songtao knew each other. Xin Yuan Songtao snorted coldly and then shouted in a deep voice, "Cut the crap. If you want to fight, let's fight." Saying that, Xin Yuan Songtao immediately made his move. The great sage of the two clans, as well as a group of experts, also made their moves. Immediately, they entered the void and started fighting. Because of the addition of Xin Yuan Wudi, the Ghost Clan had a total of 6 the Great Sage. When they attacked, it was 2 against 1. Yin Yangzi, Xing Zhantian, and Xin Yuan Songtao were facing the siege of 2 great sages of the Ghost Clan. Needless to say, the situation was 2 against 1. In just one exchange, Yin Yangzi and the other 2 were at a disadvantage. Gue Mu and Gue He joined forces to besiege Yin Yangzi. This time, Gue Mu's eyes were filled with killing intent. He looked at Yin Yangzi and said coldly, "Yin Yangzi, this time, the human race will die. The Wana Mountain Range will also be your burial ground. Please add, please vote, please recommend." Chapter 1527. This time, the advantage of the ghost race could be said to be incomparably huge. Disregarding everything else, the ghost race had already completely crushed the human race in terms of great Saint Emperors and great Saint Emperors. 6 against 3, a gap of 2 times. Since the 2 of them were ganging up on one person, there was already a possibility of killing him. Therefore, when Gue Mu fought with Yin Yangzi again, the murderous intent in his eyes erupted without holding back at all. Working together with Gue He, the 2 of them did indeed have a chance of killing Yin Yangzi. Yin Yangzi snorted coldly when he heard that, but he did not say anything. Yin Yangzi was indeed under a lot of pressure facing 2 the great sage at the same time. Furthermore, even if Yin Yangzi had the cultivation of the great sage, he could still die if the battle continued. The battle had only just begun, but Yin Yangzi and the other 2 were already at a complete disadvantage. Of course, the human race had the advantage because of Shao Chen's leadership. After all, no one in the ghost race could stop Shao Chun. However, the human race's advantage had no effect on the outcome of the battle between the great sage and the other 2. Furthermore, once Yin Yangzi and the other 2 were defeated, the overall situation would completely tilt towards the ghost race. After all, in the Central Great World, great Saint Emperors were always the top fighting force, and the key to determining the outcome of the war between the 2 races was still great Saint Emperors. Although Shao Chun and the other chosen on the Saint rankings were very talented and improved rapidly, they could not influence the outcome of the battle as long as they did not reach the Great Sage realm. Think about it. If Yin Yangzi and the other 2 were defeated or even killed, what would the outcome be? Even if the human race had an absolute advantage in the younger generation, what use would that be? Could Shao Chun contend against the Great Sage? Shao Chun and the other chosen on the Saint rankings still needed time to grow. Therefore, the ones who could really influence the outcome of the battle were still Yin Yangzi, Gue Mu, and the other the Great Sage. Their eyes were overflowing with killing intent as they attacked mercilessly. Working together with Gue He, Gue Mu's attacks were extremely ruthless. Yin Yangzi could only defend with all his strength and could not find any opportunity to counterattack. He was completely suppressed. At the same time, Xing Zhantian and Xin Yuan Songtao's situation was not better than Yin Yangzi's. Xing Zhantian was being besieged by Gue Shuang and the underworld sect leader, while Xin Yuan Songtao was being besieged by another supreme elder of Ghost King Palace and Xin Yuan Wudi. Both Xing Zhantian and Xin Yuan Songtao were in the same situation as Yin Yangzi. They couldn't even take care of themselves and could only focus on defense. However, if they kept defending for a long time, they would definitely lose. How long could this kind of defense last? Xin Yuan Songtao looked at Xin Yuan Wudi and shouted coldly, "Xin Yuan Wudi, you are a disgrace to the Xin Yuan clan." At this point, Xin Yuan Songtao's hatred for Xin Yuan Wudi had become even more intense. This was something that the Supreme Elder of Ghost King Palace, who had joined hands with Xin Yuan Wudi, could clearly feel. It seemed that Xianyuan Wudi had really fallen out with the human clan. Sensing Xianyuan Songtao's hatred for Xianyuan Wudi, the Ghost King Palace Great Elder gradually relaxed his guard against Xianyuan Wudi. Hearing Xianyuan Songtao's rebuke, Xianyuan Wudi snorted coldly and said, "It's all because of you, old man. If it wasn't for you, I wouldn't have betrayed the clan. Cut the crap. Today, I will cut off your head as proof of my allegiance." Xianyuan Wudi's words sounded like he had completely sided with the Ghost Clan. Hearing this, Xianyuan Songtao shouted angrily, "Traitor! Today, I will cripple you even if I have to die. I will get rid of a traitor like you for the Xianyuan clan." Saying this, Xianyuan Songtao seemed to have gone mad. He went all out against Xianyuan Wudi. Many times, Xianyuan Songtao had already sacrificed his life in exchange for Xianyuan Wudi's. He didn't care if he was seriously injured to severely injure Xianyuan Wudi. Seeing Xianyuan Songtao and Xianyuan Wudi fighting for their lives, the Supreme Elder of Ghost King Palace was secretly delighted. At the same time, he snorted coldly. "Xianyuan Songtao, have you forgotten that I am here? The one who will die today will be you." Saying this, the Supreme Elder of Ghost King Palace also attacked Xianyuan Songtao with all his strength. Facing Xianyuan Wudi, the Supreme Elder no longer had any vigilance. He joined forces with Xianyuan Wudi and fiercely attacked Xianyuan Songtao. In an instant, the pressure on Xianyuan Songtao increased greatly. He completely believed in Xianyuan Wudi. In the midst of the fierce battle, Xianyuan Songtao suddenly revealed a flaw. Xianyuan Wudi seized this opportunity and fiercely slapped his palm on Xianyuan Songtao's heart meridian. Suddenly, Xianyuan Songtao violently spat out a mouthful of blood, and his whole body was directly sent flying. "Old man, your heart meridian has been shattered by me. You are an arrow at the end of its flight. Today, you will die without a doubt." Looking at Xianyuan Songtao, who spat out blood and was sent flying, Xianyuan Wudi sneered coldly. At the same time, the Supreme Elder of Ghost King Palace sneered. Then, with a furious roar, he directly rushed towards Xianyuan Songtao. Xianyuan Songtao was obviously severely injured by Xianyuan Wudi. If he didn't strike now, when would he strike? His eyes flashed with excitement. At least he had killed Xianyuan Songtao. In this way, the human clan only had the Great Sage left. At that time, it would be as easy as catching a turtle in a jar for the Ghost Clan to defeat the human clan. Not only was the Supreme Elder excited, but the other 4 great sages of Ghost Clan, including Gue Fun, Gue Shuang, and Gue He, also sneered in the distance. They seemed to have already seen the scene of Xianyuan Songtao's death. However, just as Gue Fun and the other great sages of Ghost Clan were secretly excited, Xianyuan Songtao, who should have been seriously injured, suddenly forcibly stopped his body. Moreover, his aura skyrocketed again, as if he was completely uninjured. With his aura surging, Xianyuan Songtao fiercely punched out and went straight for the Supreme Elder of Ghost King Palace. Caught off guard, the Supreme Elder of Ghost King Palace's expression suddenly changed. "How is this possible? Weren't you seriously injured by Xianyuan Wudi?" He saw with his own eyes that Xianyuan Wudi's palm imprinted on Xianyuan Songtao's chest. But how could Xianyuan Songtao be fine? He was puzzled. At the same time, Xianyuan Wudi, who was behind the Supreme Elder, also made his move. However, Xianyuan Wudi's target was not Xianyuan Songtao, but the Supreme Elder. A pincer attack from the front and back, and without the slightest bit of preparation, Xianyuan Wudi and Xianyuan Songtao's attacks immediately bombarded the body of the Grand Elder. Furthermore, Xianyuan Songtao and Xianyuan Wudi did not stop their attacks. Like a storm, their attacks continuously bombarded the Grand Elder's body. Please collect, vote, recommend. Chapter 1528. Everything happened too suddenly. No one expected that Xianyuan Wudi would suddenly turn against them and kill the Supreme Elder of the Ghost King Palace. Moreover, the palm strike that Xianyuan Wudi used to injure Xianyuan Songtao, was obviously fake. Xianyuan Wudi did not use any strength at all, and Xianyuan Songtao's vomiting blood and being seriously injured were all an act. His purpose was to deceive the Supreme Elder of the Ghost King Palace and make him lower his guard. The attacks of the two continued to fall, and the Supreme Elder of the Ghost King Palace, who was caught off guard, was seriously injured in the first blow. Xianyuan Songtao and Xianyuan Wudi were obviously going for the kill. They did not give the Supreme Elder of the Ghost King Palace any time to react. After seriously injuring him with one blow, the two did not stop. Their attacks fell on the Supreme Elder of the Ghost King Palace like a storm. Seeing this scene, the first reaction of Gui Mu and the other 4 great saints of the Ghost Clan was that Xianyuan Wudi was faking his surrender. Everything that happened before was just an act. He did not betray the human clan at all. The reason why he came to the Ghost Clan was for everything that happened today. To make the great saints of the Ghost Clan lower their guard, Xianyuan Wudi suddenly launched a sneak attack and cooperated with Xianyuan Songtao to kill one of the great saints of the Ghost Clan. This was the human clan's plan. He had guessed everything at once, but it was already too late now. Even if he was a great saint emperor, the result of being besieged by Xianyuan Wudi and Xianyuan Songtao in such a defenseless situation was obvious. Faced with such a fierce attack, and the joint attack of the great sage, the Supreme Elder of the Ghost King Palace was doomed. With a cold face, Gui Mu shouted coldly, "Xianyuan Wudi, you're courting death." With that, Gui Mu ignored Yangzi and rushed towards Xianyuan Wudi. However, it was too late for him to come to the rescue. In the face of Gui Mu's sudden attack, Xianyuan Wudi dodged to the side. Then the attack stopped. However, the Supreme Elder of the Ghost King Palace had been killed. The great sage fell just like that. The main reason was that the Supreme Elder of the Ghost King Palace had underestimated Xianyuan Wudi and let his guard down. As a result, the attacks of Xianyuan Wudi and Xianyuan Songtao naturally caused him serious injuries. A great saint emperor had fallen. Seeing the death of the Supreme Elder of Ghost King Palace, Gui Fun, Gui Shuang, and the other 3 Ghost Clan great saints' faces turned extremely ugly. In the blink of an eye, the Ghost Clan had lost a great saint emperor. It went without saying how big of a blow this was to the Ghost Clan. Originally, the Ghost Clan had 5 the Great Sage. But now that one of them had fallen, the number of the Great Sage of the Ghost Clan was equal to that of the Human Clan. With the addition of a Human Clan and Shao Chun, it was impossible for the Ghost Clan to destroy the Human Clan. After all, the strength of both sides was almost the same. Moreover, the Human Clan had the absolute advantage in the younger generation. How could the Ghost Clan defeat the Human Clan? Gui Mu glared at Xianyuan Wudi with murderous eyes. At this moment, the person he hated the most was undoubtedly Xianyuan Wudi. This was the guy who pretended to defect to the Ghost Clan. In fact, he had been waiting for this opportunity all along. Damn it, Xianyuan Wudi deserves to die. Gui Mu roared at Xianyuan Wudi, "Xianyuan Wudi, I will kill you. Come if you can." Xianyuan Wudi replied indifferently. The plan had succeeded. Naturally, Xianyuan Wudi did not need to act anymore. Now that the number of the Great Sage of the Ghost Clan was equal to that of the Human Clan did not fear the Ghost Clan at all. There was no fear on his face. Hearing Xianyuan Wudi's words, Gui Mu was furious. He could not help but attack Xianyuan Wudi. In fact, Xianyuan Wudi's defection to the Ghost Clan was part of his plan from the very beginning. Although Xianyuan Songtao was not dead, the Human Clan only had one the Great Sage. Moreover, the Great Sky Lock formation of the Haotian Alliance had already been used. There was no other way to trap the Great Sage of the Ghost Clan. In this way, the Human Clan still had one more the Great Sage of the Ghost Clan. This extra person was likely enough to change the final outcome. Therefore, Xianyuan Songtao and Xianyuan Wudi put on a show. This show was to let Xianyuan Wudi pretend to defect to the Ghost Clan and gain the trust of Gui Mu and the other great sages of the Ghost Clan. Then, during the battle, Xianyuan Wudi would suddenly attack and join forces with Xianyuan Songtao to kill a great sage of the Ghost Clan. As long as they could kill the extra great sage of the ghost clan, the number of the great sage of the two clans would be equal. In this way, the human clan would have a great advantage. Based on the comparison of the strength of the two clans, there was not much difference in strength in other aspects. Only the great sage and the saints of the saint ranking had a clear gap between the two clans. Needless to say, the ghost clan had 5 great saint sovereigns, while the human clan only had 4. This was the gap between the two clans. As for the saint ranking, the human clan had Shao Chun, so it could be said that the human clan completely crushed the ghost clan. The great sage's ghost clan had the advantage, while the human clan's saint ranking had the advantage. Now, because of Xin Yuan Wudi and Xin Yuan Songtao's plan, the ghost clan's advantage on the great sage was broken. In this way, in terms of overall strength, the human clan had taken the initiative. This was because the ghost clan had lost their only advantage while the human clan still crushed the ghost clan on the saints of the saint ranking. In this way, Shao Chun could expand the entire advantage. It could be said that with the death of the supreme elder of the Ghost King Palace, the entire situation had reversed to a certain extent. Unable to restrain his anger, Gui Mu fought with Xin Yuan Wudi without holding back. However, in a one-on-one situation, Xin Yuan Wudi did not underestimate his opponent. Therefore, it was impossible for Gui Mu to kill Xin Yuan Wudi. He was neither careless nor timid. Xin Yuan Wudi and Gui Mu fought fiercely. Compared to the anger in Gui Mu's heart, Xin Yuan Wudi's face was calm. There was no other expression at all. In fact, everything about this plan started from the night when Xin Yuan Wudi went to Haoyan City to meet Xin Yuan Songtao and Xin Yuan Ling. That night, Xin Yuan Wudi came and the 3 of them met. No one knew what they talked about, but the next day, Xin Yuan Wudi betrayed the human clan. Obviously, all this plan was decided on that night. Please collect, vote, recommend. Chapter 1529. Only Xin Yuan Wudi, Xin Yuan Ling, and Xin Yuan Songtao knew what happened that night. Even Shao Chun didn't know what they talked about that night. However, judging from Xin Yuan Wudi's intentional defection to the Ghost Clan, perhaps Xin Yuan Ling and Xin Yuan Songtao had forgiven him, and Xin Yuan Wudi had repented. In the past, Xin Yuan Wudi had always wanted to surpass Xin Yuan Ling. This mentality made him more and more extreme, and in the end, he didn't hesitate to kill Xin Yuan Ling. But was this kind of surpassing meaningful to Xin Yuan Wudi? On the contrary, it was meaningless. No matter what others said, Xin Yuan Wudi knew that he was still inferior to Xin Yuan Ling late that night. Xin Yuan Wudi came to the Haoyan Alliance. As soon as he appeared, he saw Xin Yuan Ling, who had been waiting for him. Seeing Xin Yuan Wudi, Xin Yuan Ling said calmly, "Wudi, I knew you would come." Wudi. Hearing those 2 words, Xin Yuan Wudi was immediately stunned. He couldn't remember how many years it had been since he last heard such a title. Since he was young, there were only 2 people who could call Xin Yuan Wudi that. One was Xin Yuan Ling, and the other was Xin Yuan Songtao. After so many years, Xin Yuan Wudi heard this familiar name again, and a different feeling emerged in his heart. He stood there in a daze, looking at Xin Yuan Ling. After a long while, Xin Yuan Wudi said, Xin Yuan Wudi originally wanted to ask Xin Yuan Ling if he didn't hate him. After all, it was Xin Yuan Wudi who secretly killed Xin Yuan Ling, knowing what Xin Yuan Wudi wanted to say. Xin Yuan Ling smiled and shook his head. "Of course I hate you, but at the same time, I pity you. Wudi, if I knew this would happen, I wouldn't have let you chase me when we were young. I didn't know it would turn out like this." When they were young, Xin Yuan Ling deliberately let Xin Yuan Wudi chase him, so that he could give Xin Yuan Wudi a goal and let him grow up faster. But who knew that the end result would be like this? Upon hearing Xin Yuan Ling's words, Xin Yuan Wudi was stunned. He had thought about how Xin Yuan Ling would react if they were to meet again one day. Would Xin Yuan Ling be angry? Would Xin Yuan Ling roar? Might Xin Yuan Ling even be in pain? However, he had never thought that when Xin Yuan Ling faced him again, there would only be calmness and self-blame. Not knowing how to answer Xin Yuan Ling, Xin Yuan Wudi stood rooted to the ground. Xin Yuan Ling continued, "You are my brother. No matter what, I won't hurt you. After so many years, I don't blame you anymore. However, Wudi, I still hope you can take care of yourself. Power, reputation, are these things really that important? Do you know that in my eyes, power and reputation are far inferior to yours? If I had known that you wanted these things, I would have given them all to you without hesitation." Xin Yuan Ling said slowly. Hearing this, Xin Yuan Wudi was completely stunned. He had thought that Xin Yuan Ling would expose Xin Yuan Songtao's matter to the world, so that he would no longer have a place in the human race. He would be spurned by the world as revenge. However, Xin Yuan Wudi didn't expect that Xin Yuan Ling would forgive him. After hearing Xin Yuan Ling's words, Xin Yuan Wudi finally realized that he was wrong. Just as Xin Yuan Ling had said, were power and reputation really that important? Unknowingly, tears streamed down Xin Yuan Wudi's face. The emotions that he had sealed away for so many years gushed out like a flood. He bent his knees and knelt before Xin Yuan Ling, sobbing, "Big brother, I was wrong." After so many years, Xin Yuan Wudi finally said these words. Seeing this, Xin Yuan Ling smiled and said, "Even if we are brothers, even if the bones are broken, the tendons are still connected." With that, Xin Yuan Ling personally reached out and helped Xin Yuan Wudi up. At this moment, Xin Yuan Wudi seemed to have returned to being the follower who had always followed behind Xin Yuan Ling. At that time, Xin Yuan Wudi didn't have any jealousy towards Xin Yuan Ling. He only had worship that went deep into his bones. At that time, Xin Yuan Wudi only wanted to follow behind Xin Yuan Ling for the rest of his life. Together, the two brothers would become famous throughout the human race and the Central world. At this moment, Xin Yuan Wudi seemed to have returned to the past. He didn't care about being the head of the Xin Yuan clan, nor did he care about power and reputation. He only wanted to follow behind Xin Yuan Ling like he did when he was young. Even if he was just a follower, he would be satisfied. At this time, Xin Yuan Wudi realized that in his heart, he had never forgotten Xin Yuan Ling. In fact, from the beginning to the end, Xin Yuan Wudi had always regarded Xin Yuan Ling as his closest and most respected person. All along, Xin Yuan Ling was like a guiding light in Xin Yuan Wudi's heart, guiding him forward. However, Xin Yuan Wudi misinterpreted his own thoughts midway. Was he jealous of Xin Yuan Ling? No, it was admiration, pursuit, and fear of being left behind by Xin Yuan Ling. Therefore, all along, Xin Yuan Wudi had done everything he could to improve himself so that he could catch up with Xin Yuan Ling. Unfortunately, he used the wrong method midway. In front of Xin Yuan Ling, Xin Yuan Wudi wept bitterly like a child. Later, Xin Yuan Wudi met Xin Yuan Songtao. Because of Xin Yuan Ling's influence, Xin Yuan Songtao didn't pursue Xin Yuan Wudi. After all, he was also his favorite child. Just like Xin Yuan Ling, Xin Yuan Wudi found what he had lost and found the most precious thing. At this time, Xin Yuan Wudi realized that what he wanted was not power and reputation, but his family. Xin Yuan Songtao and Xin Yuan Ling compared his family. Power and reputation were not worth mentioning. Xin Yuan Wudi, who suddenly woke up, made a shocking decision that night, which was to pretend to join the Ghost Clan. That's right, the whole plan was not proposed by Xin Yuan Ling and Xin Yuan Songtao, but by Xin Yuan Wudi. A mistake was a mistake. Xin Yuan Wudi wanted to make up for it, so he could only do so. After hearing Xin Yuan Wudi's plan, Xin Yuan Ling only had one reaction on the spot, which was that Xin Yuan Wudi's reputation would be completely ruined. Moreover, Xin Yuan Wudi would no longer be the head of the Xin Yuan clan. Have you thought it through? Xin Yuan Ling asked Xin Yuan Wudi. Hearing this, Xin Yuan Wudi replied without hesitation, "Brother, I've thought it through. You should know that in this way, not only will you lose everything, but your life might also be in danger," Xin Yuan Ling said. "I know, but I don't care. It's enough as long as I have you and uncle," Xin Yuan Wudi said. Xin Yuan Ling had made up his mind. In the end, Xian Yuan Ling did not stop Xian Yuan Wudi. The next day, the news of Xian Yuan Wudi's betrayal spread. Please collect, please vote, recommend. Chapter 1530. It could be said that on that night, Xian Yuan Wudi's emotions, which had been sealed for many years, were finally opened. It allowed him to truly face his inner thoughts. He also understood what was the most precious and important thing compared to power and fame. Taking the initiative to go to the ghost race, Xian Yuan Wudi wanted to make up for his previous mistakes. Now that things had developed to this point, it could be said that Xian Yuan Wudi and Xian Yuan Songtao had worked together to kill the great sage of the ghost race. Facing Gue Mu's attack, Xian Yuan Wudi did not show any weakness. The two of them engaged in a fierce battle. At the same time, Xian Yuan Songtao, Yin Yangzi, and Xing Zhantian were also engaged in a fierce battle with Gue Shuang and the other three great sages of the ghost race. However, because the ghost race had lost the great sage, the current situation was completely different. Facing Xian Yuan Wudi and the other three, the ghost race could no longer gain any advantage. In the void, Xian Yuan Wudi, Gue Mu, and the other for the great sage of the two races were engaged in a fierce battle. At the same time, the outside world was already raining blood. Moreover, cries and wails could be heard from the horizon. The rain of blood was even heavier and more violent than when a quasi-sage fell. The wails and wails had never appeared before. It was as if someone was in pain right next to your ear. Such a phenomenon naturally attracted the attention of many people. Some people even guessed that the great sage had fallen. The battle had only begun for a few hours. Could it be that the great sage had already fallen? Everyone guessed in their hearts, but they did not dare to believe it. Moreover, because no corpse appeared in the void, many cultivators of the two races did not know who the fallen the great sage was or which side he belonged to. The corpse of the great sage of the Ghost King Palace naturally did not appear, because Gue Mu had already collected his corpse. He did not have much time to pay attention to this matter, because the two sides were already engaged in a fierce battle. Xiao Chen naturally faced Gue Yintian again. Previously, Gue Yintian had been seriously injured by Xiao Chen. Facing him again this time, Xiao Chen clearly did not hold back. His killing intent was overflowing. Xiao Chen clearly wanted to kill Gue Yintian. Gue Yintian also felt Xiao Chen's killing intent. Furthermore, he was well aware of the difference in strength between him and Xiao Chen. Thus, he had no intention of clashing head-on with Xiao Chen. Instead, he focused on dodging. His goal was to restrain Xiao Chen. He had no intention of defeating Xiao Chen at all, because it was impossible. Gue Yintian knew this very well. So, as long as he could keep Xiao Chen busy and prevent him from attacking the other Ghost Clan cultivators, Gue Yintian's mission would be considered complete. Xiao Chen had long since seen through Gue Yintian's thoughts. He was not in a hurry. This fellow was as slippery as a loach. It was impossible to catch him. However, no matter how cunning a prey was, how could it escape the gloves of a hunter? Xiao Chen had already used the sword domain and the laws of gravity, completely enveloping Gue Yintian. He slashed out with his sword, and Gue Yintian narrowly dodged it again. He did not know how many times Xiao Chen had slashed out with his sword. Although he had injured Gue Yintian along the way, he was still unable to heavily injure him. Xiao Chen was not surprised that Gue Yintian had dodged his attack again. At the same time, Gue Yintian used this opportunity to charge at Xiao Chen. He slashed out with his claw. Black, ghostly chi instantly condensed into a ghastly claw that attacked Xiao Chen. Gue Yintian was like this. He never clashed head-on with Xiao Chen. He constantly looked for opportunities to launch sneak attacks. This time, Xiao Chen had clearly revealed an opening. Thus, Gue Yintian accurately grasped this opportunity. Seeing that the ghastly claw was about to hit Xiao Chen, a sinister smile appeared on Gue Yintian's face. However, just as Gue Yintian thought that his attack was about to hit Xiao Chen, he saw Xiao Chen suddenly point out with his finger. He instantly used the Scarlet Heaven Sword Finger. After taking Gue Yintian's attack head-on, Xiao Chun counterattacked. This time, Gue Yintian had been careless and could no longer win. Moreover, Xiao Chen's attack was not aimed at Gue Yintian's vitals. Instead, it was aimed at his thigh. Gue Yintian would definitely be on guard against his vitals. However, as for his thigh, his defense was much more lax. The ghastly claw viciously landed on Xiao Chen's body. The scarlet heaven sword finger directly pierced through Gue Yintian's thigh, instantly shattering his bones and crippling his leg. After taking Gue Yintian's attack head-on, Xiao Chun was indeed injured. However, with his tempered battle body, this injury did not affect Xiao Chen's combat strength much. On the other hand, Gue Yintian's leg was crippled. As a result, his speed was greatly reduced. In this way, Gue Yintian would not be able to escape from Xiao Chun. Exchanging injury for injury, Xiao Chun crippled one of Gue Yintian's legs. With the strength of his physical body, Xiao Chun did not have much of a problem. A trace of fear flashed through Gue Yintian's eyes. He did not expect Xiao Chun to use such a move. At the same time, killing intent instantly condensed in Xiao Chen's eyes. He looked at Gue Yintian and said indifferently, "You won't be able to escape this time." Xiao Chun did not intend to kill Gue Yintian in one strike, nor did he intend to heavily injure him. From the beginning, he only had one goal, and that was to cripple one of Gue Yintian's legs and completely cripple his speed. In this way, it would be much easier to kill him later. Hearing Xiao Chen's words, Gue Yintian was stunned. He immediately wanted to use the ghost concealment secret technique to escape. However, this time, Xiao Chun was clearly prepared. He directly threw out dozens of talismans. These talismans instantly formed a talisman array around Gue Yintian. When the talisman array appeared, it was a peak saint grade trapping array. It had the ability to seal space. With the appearance of the talisman array, Gue Yintian's ghost concealment secret technique was instantly interrupted. The surrounding space was sealed by the talisman array, so Gue Yintian's ghost concealment secret technique was naturally ineffective. In truth, if a divine monarch had comprehended the laws of space, the talisman array clearly would not have been able to trap him. Unfortunately, Gue Yintian had not comprehended the laws of space, and the ghost concealment secret technique was clearly not as powerful as the laws of space. As a result, he was unable to break through the array before him. With his final path of retreat cut off by Xiao Chun, Gue Yintian could no longer conceal the fear in his eyes. At the same time, Xiao Chun walked over unhurriedly with his sword in hand. He spoke expressionlessly. "I let you escape last time. Do you think I won't be prepared this time? Gue Yintian, you really shouldn't appear before me again, especially on the battlefield. Because if you do, you really will die. Please add me to your collection. Please recommend me." Chapter 1531. Gue Yintian had managed to escape last time because Xiao Chun did not understand the ghost concealment secret technique at all, nor had he seen it before. However, Xiao Chun knew that he would have to face Gue Yintian again, so he obviously would not be unprepared. This formation was called the Ten-Sided Turbid Sky Formation. It was one of the most powerful formations that the human race possessed right now. It was completely capable of nullifying Gue Yintian's ghost concealment secret technique. Gue Yintian was unable to use the ghost concealment secret technique, and one of his legs had been crippled by Xiao Chun. As a result, it was impossible for him to escape. The fear in Gue Yintian's eyes grew heavier when he heard Xiao Chen's words and watched him walk towards him step by step. However, a sliver of madness slowly surfaced as well. It was completely impossible for him to escape now. Since that was the case, he could only go all out against Xiao Chun and put his life on the line. Even wild beasts would put up a final struggle before death, let alone cultivators. Gue Yintian was prepared to go all out after knowing that there was no way out for him. However, his thoughts were laughable in Xiao Chen's eyes. The difference between their strength was right there. Could Gue Yintian make up for it by putting his life on the line? If that was the case, there probably would not have been so many deaths in the world. With a calm expression, he walked towards Gue Yintian step by step. Seeing this, Gue Yintian also gave up on using the ghost concealment secret technique because it was useless. With a flash of determination in his eyes, Gue Yintian looked at Xiao Chun with a ferocious expression and shouted, "Xiao Chun, it won't be that easy for you to kill me." With that, Gue Yintian finally took the initiative to attack Xiao Chun. A sliver of killing intent flashed through Xiao Chen's eyes when he saw Gue Yintian's attack. He said, "Not bad actually, but you're too weak." When Xiao Chun fought Gue Yintian last time, Xiao Chun had completely crushed Gue Yintian. This time, although not much time had passed, the difference between the two of them had widened once again. Xiao Chun had no intention of dodging Gue Yintian's attack. He simply slashed out with his sword. The sword's edge streaked across, and the full mastery level of the sword realm burst forth, increasing the power of Xiao Chen's sword to the extreme. At the same time, the laws of metal and fire made Xiao Chen's sword even more terrifying. Gue Yintian was not afraid of death. He used a secret art of the ghosts right away. A ghost claw was formed and clashed with Xiao Chen's sword. The two attacks collided, but the result was as expected. Gue Yintian was sent flying by Xiao Chen's attack. A slash appeared on his chest. Although it was not fatal, it still made Gue Yintian spit out a mouthful of blood. In a head-on collision, the difference between the two of them was obvious. Gue Yintian did not have the slightest advantage before Xiao Chun. He was completely suppressed. Xiao Chun did not stop after his attack succeeded. He immediately charged towards Gue Yintian. Since he wanted to kill, Xiao Chun naturally would not give Gue Yintian the slightest chance. He did not waste his breath or hesitate. He attacked again. Gue Yintian no longer had the ability to dodge because one of his legs had been completely crippled by Xiao Chun. Hence, it was impossible for him to dodge Xiao Chen's attack. Since there was no way to dodge, he could only take it head-on. Ghost chi revolved around him as countless ghost claws condensed. Then, like 10,000 ghosts galloping, the ghost claws filled the sky as they attacked Xiao Chun. This was Gue Yintian's last attack. Seeing this, Xiao Chen's sword realm exploded. The power of the sword realm, which was filled with spiritual power, formed into swords that could be seen with the naked eye. They then collided with the countless ghostly claws. The two attacks collided and then dissipated. Gue Yintian's final attack did not cause any harm to Xiao Chun. His ghost claws were also destroyed by Xiao Chen's sword domain. After blocking Gue Yintian's attack, Xiao Chun pointed his finger and used the Scarlet Cloud sword finger. 3 fiery red sword lights shot out towards Gue Yintian's dantian, heart, and forehead. The 3 sword lights shot out like lightning. At this moment, Gue Yintian felt the aura of death. He wanted to resist, but he could not control his body. He could only watch as the 3 sword lights arrived in front of him and pierced through his body. Bloody holes appeared in his dantian, forehead, and heart. These were the 3 vital points of the human body. Now that they were all hit by Xiao Chun, Gue Yintian's fate was sealed. Before he died, Gue Yintian's face was filled with disbelief. Perhaps he never thought that there would be a day when he would be killed. Before the battle, Gue Yintian knew that he would have to face Xiao Chun. But at that time, he thought that even if his strength was not as good as Xiao Chen's, Xiao Chun would not be able to kill him. But who would have thought that the final result would be completely different from what Gue Yintian imagined? Xiao Chun really killed him. The aura of death enveloped Gue Yintian. His consciousness gradually blurred. In the end, Gue Yintian's body fell from the sky. The first holy sun of the ghost race had fallen in the Wanha mountain range. In the sky, the light screen of the saint ranking appeared once more. Gue Yintian, who was originally 5th on the saint ranking, was directly erased from the saint ranking. This also meant that Gue Yintian was dead. Changes were seen on the saint ranking again. However, this was only the beginning, as it happened right after Xiao Chun killed Gue Yintian. Perhaps it was truly a coincidence, as the light screen of the saint ranking did not disappear. Shortly after, several names were erased. The barbarian race, sky race, beast race, divine race, and even a human holy son's name were directly erased from the saint ranking. The large number of deaths of the holy sons on the saint ranking was related to the war between the various races. The barbarian race and the sky race were fighting fiercely, the beast race and the divine race were fighting fiercely, and the human race and the ghost race were fighting fiercely. As a result, it was not strange that the holy sons on the saint ranking were dying on such a large scale. Seeing that Hua Wushuang's name was directly erased from the saint ranking, Xiao Chun directly found Hua Wushuang on the battlefield. She had indeed been killed. She had been killed by the third holy son of the ghost race. Gui Min Xiao Chun had fought with Gui Min before, so he knew his strength. But now that Gui Min had killed Hua Wushuang, Xiao Chun was still stunned. This was war. Both sides had to pay a heavy price. He had killed Gui Yintian, and Gui Min had killed Hua Wushuang. This was the most realistic result. In just a few dozen breaths, more than a dozen holy sons on the saint ranking had fallen. Such a large number of deaths was obviously impossible to see in normal times. It was only during the War of the 100 Races that such a large number of holy sons on the saint ranking would die, begging for collection, begging for monthly votes, begging for recommendations. Chapter 1532. In a short period of time, more than a dozen saints had fallen on the saint ranking. The world was shocked by this scene, but at the same time, they felt that it was only natural. After all, in the entire central world, only the demon race had not participated in the war. The others, such as the deity race, the heavenly race, the barbarian race, the ghost race, the human race, and the beast race had all broken out in war. The entire central world was in chaos. In such an intense battle, not to mention the saints on the saint ranking, even the great sage had fallen. There was nothing strange about it. Hua Wushuang's death indeed made many people of the human tribe sad. However, there was nothing they could do about it. There was no such thing as not being human in a war. Regardless of victory or defeat, there would definitely be countless people who would lose their lives in the process. There was no time to grieve over Hua Wushuang's death. Xiao Chun had already rushed into the ghost race's camp and started a crazy massacre. The human race had lost Hua Wushuang, but the ghost race was even more miserable. They had lost the first saint, Gui Yintian. Xiao Chun had killed Gui Yintian. Gui Yintian's death was obviously a greater blow to the ghost race. However, the two races had already gone all out at this time, so there was no time to think too much. The fierce battle continued. At the same time, in the void, the battle between Xinyuan Wudi, Gui Mu, and the other great saints of the two races was also in full swing. After losing the great sage, the ghost race had lost all their advantages. They could not do anything to the human race at this time. In the outside world, under the leadership of Xiao Chun, Gui Yintian had died. The ghost race's casualties were obviously much worse than the human race's. Xiao Chun alone was enough to make the ghosts unable to deal with him. They simply could not do anything to him. Although many ghost race warriors fearlessly rushed toward Xiao Chun, the result was no exception. They were all killed by Xiao Chun. Those ghost race half-saints were like clay chickens and pottery dogs in front of Xiao Chun. They were no match for Xiao Chun at all. Gui Fen's expression became gloomy as he watched the ghost race suffer more and more casualties. At the same time, he didn't have any way to deal with Xinyuan Wudi and the other great saints. Helplessly, Gui Mu could only give the order to retreat. After the ghost race retreated, the human race didn't pursue them. After all, even though the human race had gained a slight advantage in the battle, they had suffered heavy casualties as well. Both sides had suffered losses, so it was a good thing for the humans that the ghost race took the initiative to retreat. After the battle was over and they returned to the encampment, many human warriors found out that Xinyuan Wudi had pretended to betray the human race. It was also because of Xinyuan Wudi's cooperation that they were able to successfully kill a great saint of the Ghost Clan. Not only did Xinyuan Wudi not betray the human race, but he also made great contributions to the human race. After hearing this news, the warriors of the Xianyuan clan were naturally most concerned. They felt quite elated. A few days ago, because of Xianyuan Wudi's betrayal, the Xianyuan clan was pushed to the teeth of the storm. Now, the truth was revealed. Moreover, with the return of Xianyuan Wudi, the Xianyuan clan now had the great sage. It could be said that the Xianyuan clan deserved to be called the #1 sect of the human race. The disciples of the Xianyuan clan felt very proud. However, Xianyuan Wudi didn't care about the shock in the outside world at all. After the battle, Xianyuan Wudi went straight to Xianyuan Ling. He didn't know why, but since Xianyuan Wudi turned over a new leaf, he liked to follow Xianyuan Ling, just like when he was a child. He didn't care that Xianyuan Ling's cultivation was only in the saint realm, and he was the great sage. Anyway, Xianyuan Wudi wanted to follow Xianyuan Ling. In Xianyuan Ling's residence, Xiao Chun, Xianyuan Ling, Qin Shiru, and Xianyuan Wudi sat together and looked at Xianyuan Wudi. Xiao Chun said helplessly, "I say, as a dignified, great holy emperor, why are you following us all day?" "I'm following my brother," Xianyuan Wudi said indifferently when he heard Xiao Chen's words. Then he turned to look at Xianyuan Ling and said with a smile, "Brother, this spiritual fruit is good. Try it." He was extremely respectful to Xianyuan Ling, seeing Xianyuan Wudi like this. Xiao Chun said angrily, "You're really sick." Xianyuan Wudi's actions made Xiao Chun speechless. Xianyuan Ling was also quite helpless. This guy had really changed completely. The current Xianyuan Wudi didn't care about power at all. Now, Xianyuan Wudi handed over everything of the Xianyuan clan to Xianyuan Songtao. Xianyuan Wudi didn't even bother to do what Xianyuan Songtao asked him to do. Unless Xianyuan Ling asked, Xianyuan Wudi simply didn't hear anything about the outside world. Such a huge change was really hard to accept. Since then, Xianyuan Ling had the great sage as his little follower. He didn't know whether to be happy or speechless. The morale of the human clan was greatly boosted by Xianyuan Wudi's matter. After all, in this battle, not only did Xiao Chan kill Gue Yintian, but Xianyuan Wudi and Xianyuan Songtao also killed a great sage of the Ghost Clan. Compared to the high morale of the human clan, the Ghost Clan was extremely disappointed. In the encampment of the Ghost Clan, Gue Mu and the other 3 great sages of the Ghost Clan gathered together. After this battle, the Ghost Clan could be said to have suffered heavy losses. The great sage died, Yintian died, and as for the other Ghost Clan cultivators, who knew how many of them died? With a gloomy face, Gue Mu looked at Gue Shuang and the other 2 in front of him and said fiercely, "Xianyuan Wudi, I will not let him go. What's the use of saying this now? Let's think about what we should do next." Gue Crane said angrily, "The great sage died, and Gue Yintian died. What should the Ghost Clan do next? Should they continue to fight, or should they ask for peace from the human clan like before?" There was no need to think about asking for peace. The price they would have to pay would be much heavier than the previous time. Moreover, it was still uncertain whether the human clan would agree. Gue Mu's eyes flickered with dense, killing intent as he shouted coldly, "Ask for peace? We of the Ghost Clan will not ask for peace in this battle. Even if both sides suffer heavy losses, we of the Ghost Clan will not take a step back." The 4 great sages of the Ghost Clan gathered together to discuss. The final decision was to fight to the death. They would definitely not ask for peace from a human clan. The Ghost Clan was already in a frenzy. Following their decision, the war between the 2 clans would probably turn into a river of blood. This war would not stop until one side completely collapsed. Please add, please vote, please recommend. Chapter 1533. The Ghost Race was determined to fight to the death. As a result, the 2 races engaged in the most intense and bloody battle in the Wanha mountain range. If the Ghost Race did not retreat, the human race would not retreat either. This was because the moment the human race retreated, the Ghost Race would be able to advance and spread the flames of war to every corner of the human race's territory. They had a fight to the death in the Wana mountain range. Neither race retreated. In the following month, the Wana mountain range was like a giant millstone, crushing countless lives within. Every few days, the two races would engage in a great war. In every battle, the casualties of both races would be extremely heavy. The battle had already descended into the most bloody tug-of-war. Although Shao Chun had killed many ghost race cultivators, it was clear that Shao Chun alone could not kill all the ghost race cultivators in a short period of time. The ghost race's attitude toward Shao Chun was also very clear. They would use their lives to fill the gap. No one could stop Shao Chun. Die. Every time the battle began, many ghost race cultivators would use their own lives to delay him. They were using the tactic of using numbers. Although the casualties were heavy, they were still able to delay Shao Chun. In a month, the Wana mountain range had become a mountain of corpses. Corpses were everywhere. While the human race and ghost race were fighting to the death, the celestial race, barbarian race, divine race, and beast race were the same. The war between the races was still incomparably fierce, no less than the war between the human race and ghost race. While the six races were engaged in a fierce battle, in the largest city in the divine race's territory, Heavenly God City, there was a huge underground palace. No one in the central world knew about this underground palace. Even the God race cultivators did not know about it. The only people who knew about such a huge underground palace beneath Heavenly God City were the great sages of the God race. At this moment, the battle between the God race and the beast race was still ongoing. The great sages of the God race had also gathered on the battlefield. There were a total of 8 great sages of the God race. The great sages were already a very powerful force. At the same time, the various races of the central world believed that the 8 great sages were the full force of the God race. However, no one had expected that there would be a total of 10 great sages of the God race gathered in the underground palace beneath Heavenly God City. 10. The great sages. In other words, there were a total of 18 the great sages of the God race. In other words, the strength of the God race. After all, as far as he knew, among the 100 clans of the central world, except for the divine race, no other race had more than 10 great holy emperors, while the divine race had a total of 18. Such terrifying strength was enough to shock the world. But at the same time, if the God race had such great strength, why didn't they show it? Moreover, the God race was now engaged in a fierce battle with the beast race. Why didn't the God race send the great sages? Given the current situation, the God race only needed to send 2 more the great sages. They would be able to turn the tide of the battle in an instant and crush the beast race. The war had been going on for a month, but the God race had no intention of making a move. The 10 great sages of the God race remained in Heavenly God City. They had no intention of making a move. This puzzled everyone. Moreover, what was even more strange was that there was a high platform in front of the underground palace. On the high platform sat a figure in a red robe. The robe covered the figure's body and face. It was impossible to tell whether the figure was male or female. At this moment, the 10 great sages of the God race stood respectfully below the figure in red robes. They cupped their hands and bowed. Greetings, emissary. The great sages were actually so respectful to the figure in red robes. This was indeed unexpected. After all, the great sage was already the strongest person in the central world. In the central world, there was probably no one else besides the will of the heavenly way who could make the great sage bow so respectfully. But at this moment, the figure in red robes was making the 10 great sages of the God race so respectful. This was puzzling. Upon hearing what the 10 great saints of the God race had to say, a voice that was a mixture of male and female voices rang out. It's not enough. The power of the soul is not enough. Go, declare war on the demon race. I want more power of the soul. This voice clearly came from the figure in red robes. Hearing this, the 10 great sages of the God race respectfully replied, "Yes, we will obey the emissary's command." The 10 great sages of the god race addressed the figure in red robes as the emissary. As for his true identity, it was likely that no one in the central world knew about it, except for these great sages of the god race. No one even knew of his existence. The war between the beast race and the god race was still going on. But what no one expected was that during this period, the god race took the initiative to declare war again. Did they want to declare war on both the beast race and the demon race at the same time? This move of the god race immediately caused a stir in the central world. This was simply crazy. Declaring war on two powerful races at the same time. Was the god race digging their own graves? Similarly, the demon race was also puzzled by the god race's move. But the demon race also chose to fight at the first moment. Perhaps in the demon race's opinion, the god race had already fought the beast race and had no power to deal with the demon race at this time. Like the beast race, the demon race also had 7 the great sage. Everyone thought that the god race was crazy and that they were digging their own graves. But just as the world was thinking this, an even more explosive news came. That was, the god race actually had 7 more the great sage. The war with the beast race had already involved 8 great sages of the god race. Now, in another war with the demon race, the god race actually had 7 more the great sage. In this way, wouldn't the god race have a total of 15 the great sage? 15 the great sage. With this news, the central world was directly shaken. Even the beast race and the demon race were shocked. How could this be? How could the god race suddenly have so many the great sage? It could be said to be a miracle. The 7 great sages of the god race directly rushed to the border between the god race and the demon race. Immediately, the war between the two races broke out. With the outbreak of the war between the god race and the demon race, it meant that the god race was now fighting on 2 fronts. They were fighting against 2 powerful races at the same time with their own strength. This was the first time in the history of the central world that such a situation had happened. There had never been a race like the god race that could suddenly become so powerful and fight against 2 powerful races at the same time with their own strength. Please add this to your collection. Monthly vote. Recommend this. Chapter 1534. The 100 races of the central world were shocked by the god race's sudden display of strength. However, the 100 races also had the same question in their minds. Since the Protoss had such powerful strength, why did they have to fight on 2 fronts? The number of the great sage that the Protoss had revealed had reached 15. With such strength, there was no need for the Protoss to take the initiative to provoke the demon race. They could deal with the beast race first, and then turn around to deal with the demon race. Wouldn't that be a sure-win situation? But now, the divine race and the beast race had yet to decide a victor, yet they had not sent more great holy emperors to the beast race, and had instead directly declared war on the demon race. As a result, the Protoss were fighting on 2 fronts. The situation that was originally a sure-win situation had now become a stalemate. Fighting on 2 fronts, the Protoss did not have much of an advantage whether it was against the demon race or the beast race. In this case, what was the Protoss planning? They could have easily defeated them one by one, but the Protoss did the opposite. This made the world puzzled. Among the humans, Xiao Chun naturally knew about the Protoss. At this time, Xin Yuanling was sitting opposite Xiao Chun and asked in confusion, "Third brother, why do you think the Protoss are doing this? With 15, the great sage, the Protoss can completely dominate the central world. Why provoke the demon race before the war with the beast race is over?" Xin Yuanling could not figure it out. Hearing this, Xiao Chun fell into deep thought and said softly, "There's only one explanation, and that is that the Protoss don't want to win, or rather, the Protoss don't care about winning or losing." Don't want to win? Third brother, is there a war in this world that you don't want to win? Xin Yuanling replied after hearing Xiao Chen's words. No one would not want to win any war that broke out. Since you don't want to win, why fight? He could just surrender. Xin Yuanling did not seem to agree with Xiao Chen's point of view, and Xiao Chen did not care. After a pause, he continued, Perhaps the Protoss want to achieve a certain goal through war, and this goal has nothing to do with winning or losing. This was Xiao Chen's guess. One had to admit that Xiao Chen's guess was very accurate. Indeed, the God race did not care about winning or losing. What the God race wanted was a battle, a fierce battle, because people would die in a battle, and if they endured for a while, their souls would perish. However, in the underground palace of the God race's Sky God City, there was a huge array. There was also a blood pool in the middle of the array. At this moment, soul power was converging from all directions. These soul forces were the true goal of the Protoss. They didn't need to fight to determine the outcome, or rather, they didn't want the war to end at all. Because only by continuing the war, the soul forces would be able to continuously gather here. The only function of this array formation was to forcefully absorb the souls of cultivators that had yet to dissipate the moment they died. It required a huge amount of souls. Such a large number of souls could only be obtained during the War of the 100 Races. Normally, the God race would not brazenly absorb so many souls. Otherwise, it would definitely be discovered. However, it was different during the War of the 100 Races. When the major races fought, it was normal for people to die. Naturally, no one would discover that the God race was secretly collecting these souls. The God race's goal was these souls. Therefore, they did not want the war to end. They even wanted to make the war even more intense. The more intense the war between the major races, the more souls the God race could obtain. Their goal was the souls. However, no one knew what these souls were used for. Perhaps only the great saints of the God race and the red-robed figure knew. At this time, in the underground palace of the heavenly God city, the red-robed figure stood beside the blood pool. Although his face was hidden by the red robe, if someone was here, they might be able to sense the excitement in the red-robed figure's heart. Yes, he was excited as he watched the souls continuously converge into the blood pool. At this time, the blood pool seemed to be boiling, constantly bubbling with blood. At the same time, there were traces of indescribable fluctuations in the surrounding space. Almost there, just a little bit more, just a little bit more. The red-robed figure thought to himself. At this time, a great saint of the God race, standing not far away from the red-robed figure, spoke up. "Emissary, are we being too impatient? If we do this, what if the will of the heavenly way detects us? Won't all our previous efforts be wasted?" The great saint of the God race was somewhat worried. However, as soon as he finished speaking, the red-robed figure did not do anything. Suddenly, the great saint of the God race was sent flying, violently coughing up a large mouthful of blood. The great sage was severely injured with a single blow. Although the red-robed figure did not see the red-robed figure's movements, all of this must have come from his hand. Turning to look at the severely injured great saint of the God race, the red-robed emissary spoke again in an extremely cold voice, neither male nor female. "These things are not for you to worry about. If there's a next time, jump into the blood pool yourself and become nourishment." Scram! Hearing this, the great saint of the God race did not dare show the slightest dissatisfaction. He immediately struggled to his feet and nodded fearfully. Yes. Then he left the blood pool. After ordering the great saint of the God race to retreat, the red-robed figure turned back to the blood pool. His indifferent voice was very soft, so soft that it was almost inaudible. "Soon, just 3 more days. In 3 days, the gate to the immortal region will be completed. When that time comes, even if the will of the heavenly way of the 7th wilderness discovers us, so what? Ha ha!" As he spoke, the red-robed figure could not help but laugh aloud. The God race's goal in wanting so many souls and the identity of the red-robed figure were all mysteries. None of this had been discovered by the 100 races of the Central World. Not only the 100 races, but even the will of the heavenly way of the Central World was completely oblivious. The red-robed figure was like an invisible person. No one knew how long he had been lurking in the Central World, and no one knew what he wanted to do. However, from the fact that he was able to severely injure the great sage with a single blow, It was clear that this red-robed figure was definitely not a simple person. Or perhaps it should be said that his cultivation was probably beyond the knowledge of everyone in the Central World. Moreover, from his words, it was not difficult to tell that he might not be from the Central World, but from another place, a place that no one had ever heard of. Please add this to your collection. Monthly vote. Recommend this. Chapter 1535. No one in the Central World had discovered what the divine race was hiding, and no one had expected it, including Xiao Chun. Although Xiao Chun guessed that the divine race didn't care about the outcome of the war, and that they had other objectives, Xiao Chun didn't know what those objectives were, nor could he predict them. The strength of the divine race had shocked the hundreds of races in the Central World. But even so, the war didn't stop, especially the divine race. In the past few days, the divine race seemed to have gone crazy, continuously attacking the beast race and the devil race. The battle between the three races could be said to be incomparably bitter. Facing the crazy attacks of the divine race, the beast race and the devil race suffered heavy casualties. The two races couldn't understand what was going on with the divine race. Why did they suddenly go crazy? They didn't care about the price they had to pay. The beast race and the devil race suffered heavy casualties, but the divine race was the same. 3 days passed in the blink of an eye, but to the beast race and the devil race, these 3 short days felt like years to the cultivators of the two races. Why? Because in these 3 days, the divine race didn't stop attacking. 3 days of continuous attacks. They didn't care about the price they had to pay. But on the 4th day, the divine race suddenly went silent, and without any warning, they stopped their attacks. The actions of the divine race were too abnormal. But this time, in the underground palace of the heavenly god city, the blood pool had completely exploded, and the blood in the pool was boiling. The red-robed figure stood by the side of the blood pool, and his face was filled with an excited smile as he spoke. 2,000 years, 2,000 years. I've finally succeeded. This seed has finally succeeded. Ha! The gate to the immortal domain has succeeded. Ha ha! The red-robed figure laughed heartily. Then, he formed a seal with both hands. As he formed the seal, the blood in the blood pool floated in the air, and a mysterious force spread in all directions. As this energy spread out, the ground of heavenly God City began to collapse. Cracks appeared as the ground collapsed. Faced with this sudden change, the people of heavenly God City were completely unprepared. Those ordinary humans with no cultivation base fell down from the crevice one by one. The other warriors who could fly also flew up into the sky to avoid the fall. The buildings began to collapse. In just a few dozen breaths, the entire heavenly God City was destroyed. At the same time, the many God race cultivators in the sky finally saw that there was a massive underground palace beneath heavenly God City. And this underground palace was actually the same size as heavenly God City. Such a huge underground palace had always existed beneath heavenly God City, but no one knew about it. Seeing this scene, many God race martial artists were stunned. But as they were stunned, a blob of blood shot up from the ground. In midair, the blob of blood exploded. Then, there was no blood splattering. On the contrary, after the blob of blood exploded, a rainbow rain began to fall from the sky. The entire sky was dyed with a myriad of colors. It was a beautiful sight. As the rainbow rain fell from the sky, a tranquil aura spread out. For a moment, everyone felt incomparably comfortable. It was as if they were in an immortal realm. There were even some who couldn't help but exclaim, "So beautiful." The scene before them was indeed beautiful. But was this really an immortal realm? Under the cover of the rainbow rain, the space above heavenly God City began to collapse. Then, a huge, exquisite, jade-white gate slowly appeared. At first, this gate was like a mirage, very illusory. But under everyone's gaze, the gate gradually solidified. In the end, it seemed to pass through time and space and truly descended in the sky above heavenly God City. At the same time, when the jade-white door appeared, the red-robed figure also appeared in the sky, right in front of the jade-white door. Looking at the jade-white door, the red-robed figure finally could not help but laugh out loud. Ha ha! The gate to the immortal domain. The gate to the immortal domain. His seat really did it. He was excited. He'd finally succeeded. Then, the red-robed figure tore off his own red robes, revealing his true appearance. He wasn't some monster. In fact, he was quite handsome. He was a god race youth. After removing his red robes, he wore a long, violet gold robe. He seemed graceful and noble. He was so young and handsome. It was hard to imagine that a great sage of the god race would treat him with such reverence. After revealing his true appearance, the youth's sky-blue eyes swept over the surrounding god race martial artists. He smiled faintly. Will of the heavenly way, are you still not going to show yourself? The seventh wilderness is about to be finished. The gate to the immortal domain sank. The youth no longer needed to hide anything. At the same time, as his voice fell, a towering aura erupted from his body. This aura was far greater than a great sage's. Just the eruption of his aura instantly caused the numerous god race martial artists around him to explode, filling the sky with a mist of blood. Just a strand of his aura had killed everyone in Heavenly God City. This was the youth's strength, far greater than the great sage's. In an instant, he'd killed hundreds of thousands of people. The youth's expression didn't change at all. He looked indifferently at the space in front of him. As he looked, a figure shrouded in five-colored light slowly appeared. Xiao Chun had seen this figure before. Or rather, it wasn't just Xiao Chun. The 36 Heavenly Star Saint Sons had seen this figure before. It was the will of the Heavenly Way. Back when they'd received the Heavenly Way's inheritance, the 36 Heavenly Star Saint Sons had all seen the will of the Heavenly Way. At that time, the will of the Heavenly Way was just like now. He was shrouded in five-colored light from head to toe, and only an illusory human figure could be seen. The will of the Heavenly Way had appeared. Seeing this, the youth didn't panic at all. On the contrary, he sneered. 2,000 years, 2,000 years. Ha, I've finally succeeded. The will of the Heavenly Way, you've only noticed now. Unfortunately, it's too late. My gate to the immortal domain has been completed. Everything has been settled. The youth laughed excitedly. However, the will of the Heavenly Way ignored him. Although the will of the Heavenly Way's face and expression couldn't be seen clearly, he could vaguely sense that the will of the Heavenly Way's gaze had fallen on the jade-white gate. As for the youth, he'd completely ignored him, begging for collection, begging for monthly votes, begging for recommendations. Chapter 1536. Shrouded in the five-colored light, the gaze of the will of the Heavenly Way remained fixed on the gate of the immortal realm. As for the young man, he was completely ignored by the will of the Heavenly Way. Although the young man's cultivation might have exceeded the great sage realm and reached a level that no one in the central world could imagine, he was still just an ant in the eyes of the will of the Heavenly Way. At most, he was just a slightly bigger ant. Therefore, the will of the Heavenly Way did not care about the young man at all. What the will of the Heavenly Way cared about, or rather, worried about, was the gate of the immortal realm. Now that the gate of the immortal realm had been formed, those terrifying fellows could enter the central world through the gate of the immortal realm. Moreover, the most important point was that once the gate of the immortal realm was formed, there was no way to destroy it. Even the will of the Heavenly Way could not do it. The gate of the immortal realm was the most troublesome part. As for the young man, he could be easily destroyed, so there was no need to care. Seeing that the will of the Heavenly Way did not even care about him, the anger in the young man's eyes continued to gather. Then he directly slammed his palm down and shouted angrily, "Don't underestimate me. The seventh wilderness is finished. Will of the Heavenly Way die?" Accompanied by the angry shout, a huge palm print fell from the sky. This palm print was far beyond the level of the great sage. Its terrifying power seemed to be able to suppress the world with one palm. Even a great sage emperor wouldn't be able to resist such an attack. It was hard to imagine what level the mysterious young man's cultivation had reached. Or rather, was there really a stronger existence above the great sage realm? The will of the heavenly way did not move in the slightest in the face of a palm that could directly kill the great sage. Just as the palm was about to strike the will of the heavenly way, the five-colored light that enveloped the will of the heavenly way suddenly erupted, forming a rainbow in the sky and easily blocking the young man's palm. The palm print was directly shattered. Seeing this scene, the mysterious youth's expression became extremely ugly. At the same time, the will of the heavenly way's voice slowly sounded. 100 miles of defense is destroyed by an ant's nest. I truly did not expect that an ant like you would destroy the seventh wasteland's 10,000 miles of defense. This time, the figure of will of the heavenly way was no longer blurry. On the contrary, it was very clear. It was a very magnetic male voice. Along with the voice, a figure slowly walked out of the five-colored light. The light slowly dissipated, and then the true appearance of the will of the heavenly way finally appeared in front of the world. For everyone in the central world, the will of the heavenly way was definitely the most mysterious existence. Even the great sage had never seen the glory of the will of the heavenly way. But now, the will of the heavenly way appeared in front of the mysterious youth without any concealment. He had a head of black hair and a youthful appearance. His facial features could be said to be flawless. Who would have thought that the ruler of the central world, the will of the heavenly way, would be a young man? Of course, for the will of the heavenly way, appearance did not matter at all. As long as he wanted, he could change his appearance at any time and place. He could even change his gender without a problem. His eyes were indifferent to the extreme. They were very merciful, but also very ruthless. It gave people a very complicated feeling. After revealing his true appearance, the will of the heavenly way looked at the mysterious youth. Seeing this, the mysterious youth could not help but feel nervous. Although he seemed to be completely unafraid of the will of the heavenly way before, at this moment, he could not help but panic. There was no anger in his eyes, nor was there any fluctuation in his emotions. The will of the heavenly way just looked at the mysterious youth quietly. Then he slowly opened his mouth and spoke. His voice was very pleasant and extremely magnetic, but it also seemed to be able to travel through time and space. It gave people an inexplicable feeling. You have been hiding in the seventh wilderness for thousands of years just to build the gate to the immortal realm. Now that you have succeeded, not bad. Hearing this, the will of the heavenly way seemed to be praising the mysterious youth. However, as soon as he finished speaking, the will of the heavenly way slowly pointed his finger. Then a five-colored ray of light burst out and shot directly between the mysterious youth's eyebrows. The will of the heavenly way's meaning was very simple. It was his negligence that allowed the mysterious youth to successfully build the gate to the immortal realm. However, it was too late to say this now. Next, he had to prepare to face the thing behind the gate to the immortal realm. As for this mysterious youth, since the gate to the immortal realm had been built, then he could die. The finger directly pierced through the youth's eyebrows. The five-colored ray of light gathered on the mysterious youth's body, and it began to dissipate into thin air. That's right, it dissipated. It was as if it was forcibly erased by some kind of power. There was no flesh and blood splattering everywhere. It was completely and strangely dissipating in the air. Starting from his feet, he was slowly being erased. Seeing this, the mysterious youth's face revealed a hint of malevolence. The seventh wilderness is finished. The will of the heavenly way, the seventh wilderness is finished. He roared crazily. However, the will of the heavenly way did not care about the mysterious youth's roar at all. In just 10 breaths of time, the mysterious youth directly dissipated in the air. He was absolutely dead. However, killing the mysterious youth was not of much use. Because the gate to the immortal realm had been completed, the mysterious youth was almost useless. His gaze once again fell on the gate to the immortal realm. The will of the heavenly way was expressionless. No one knew what he was thinking. It was also at this moment that several spatial cracks appeared. The great sage stepped out of the cracks. There were great sages of the demon clan, great sages of the god clan, great sages of the celestial clan, great sages of the ghost clan, and of course, great sages of the human clan. Everyone had rushed over because they had sensed the great changes in Heavenly God City. The entire central world had sensed the terrifying aura emanating from Heavenly God City earlier. Such a terrifying aura made the great sage unable to care about anything else. They immediately stopped fighting and rushed over. Looking at the gate to the immortal realm and the will of the heavenly way in front of them, a great sage of the God clan shouted in a deep voice. "Who are you?" Naturally, no one recognized the will of the heavenly way, because no one had seen the will of the heavenly way's true appearance. However, when he heard the great sage of the God clan, the will of the heavenly way replied indifferently. "Originally, I didn't want to attack any of the clans. However, your God clan has indeed gone overboard this time. Do you know that once the gate to the immortal realm is completed, the seventh wilderness will be in danger?" His words were emotionless. When they heard the will of the heavenly way's words, the great sage present were stunned. Their eyes were filled with confusion. What seventh wilderness? And what did the God clan do? The great sage did not understand the meaning of the will of the heavenly way at all. However, a strange look flashed through the eyes of the God clan's great sage. Please add this to your collection. Please recommend it. Chapter 1537. Wonderful, no pop-up window for free reading. The great sage of the other races, such as Yangzi, Dragon Emperor, and the others, were all confused when they heard the will of the heavenly way's words. They had no idea what was going on. A strange look flashed across their eyes. The great sages of the god race began to look around as if they were looking for something. The great sages of the god race were looking for the mysterious youth from before. It could be said that the mysterious youth was the master of these great sages of the god race. He was also the greatest secret of the god race. To be honest, the great sages of the god race also did not know the identity of the mysterious youth. However, the mysterious youth's methods shocked the great sages of the god race. The great sage of the god race now had a total of 18 the great sage, and the reason there were so many great sages was all because of the mysterious youth. The mysterious youth could help the experts of the god race break through to the great sage realm. In return, the god race had to find a way to cooperate with the mysterious youth to obtain enough souls. Both sides could be said to have made a deal. The great sages of the god race did not know what the mysterious youth's goal was, but because they could not resist the temptation of the great sage realm, they chose to cooperate with the mysterious youth. Just as the great sages of the god race were searching for the mysterious youth, 3 more great sages of the god race flew out from the ruins of the heavenly god city. However, from the looks of it, they were all injured. Another 3 the great sage, Yangzi, Dragon Emperor, and the other great sages of the other races were shocked when they saw the 3. The great sage of the god race already had 15 the great sage, but now there were 3 more. Just how many great sages did the god race have? They were extremely shocked. They did not expect the god race to have so many living great sages. 18, it really was 18. This was a joke. Everyone was shocked. However, the will of the heavenly way said calmly, "There's no need to look. He's already dead." The will of the heavenly way naturally knew what the great sages of the god race were looking for. When they heard this, the great sages of the god race were shocked. One of them shouted in a deep voice, "Impossible! What's the matter with Sir? No one in the central world can kill him." The great sages of the divine race worshipped the mysterious youth blindly. His strength was so strong that it was terrifying. Even the great sage could easily kill the mysterious youth. How could such a person die? The will of the heavenly way sighed in the face of the great sage of the god race. The ignorant are fearless. You don't know anything, yet you dare to ask a tiger for its skin. How sad. The will of the heavenly way had no intention of interrogating the great sages of the Protoss, because he knew that these guys knew nothing at all. They cooperated with the mysterious youth for the sake of power, so that more people could break through to the great sage realm. What a joke. For the sake of a mere supreme saint, the Protoss had plunged the central world into an extremely dangerous, forbidden area. Just like the will of the heavenly way said, the ignorant are fearless. Because the great sages of the Protoss were ignorant, they didn't know what fear was. Listening to the conversation between the great sages of the Protoss and the will of the heavenly way, the Yangtze Dragon Emperor and the others were completely confused. What was going on? What were they talking about? The great sages of the other races didn't know what was going on at all, nor did they know about the gate of the immortal realm. They didn't even know the identity of the will of the heavenly way. As soon as he finished speaking, the will of the heavenly way didn't bother to talk nonsense. At the same time, a huge black hole appeared in the sky, and then a strong heavenly might spread out from it. This is heavenly punishment. Heavenly punishment. This is definitely heavenly punishment. Looking at the black hole, someone couldn't help but exclaim. No one here had broken through, so why would heavenly punishment appear? They were very puzzled, but soon 18 bolts of heavenly lightning fell from the sky from the black hole, directly rushing towards the great sage of the Protoss. Heavenly punishment appeared out of nowhere, and it had a target. It only attacked the great sage of the Protoss. As heavenly punishment fell, the great sages of the Protoss were stunned at first, but they quickly came to their senses and resisted. Although they did not understand why the heavenly punishment would suddenly appear, it was obviously not the time to think so much. They all attacked together to resist, but unfortunately, the power of the heavenly punishment was too great. With just one blow, the 18 great saints of the Shun clan were directly killed. The great sage of the Protoss were killed in an instant. Then, the black hole in the sky slowly closed, as if nothing had happened. Only the corpses of the great sage of the Protoss proved what had just happened. The great sage fell in an instant, and this time, there was no rain of blood or cries in the sky. At this point, how could the great sages of the other races not know that the young man in front of them was the will of the heavenly way of the central world? Seeing the will of the heavenly way for the first time, even the great sages were very nervous at this time. After all, this was the real master of the entire central world. All living beings of the central world, no matter which race they were protected by the will of the heavens. They looked at the will of the heavenly way with a dull expression. Seeing this, the will of the heavenly way didn't hide his identity and said indifferently, "All of you step back. What's going to happen next is not something you can interfere with." He asked the great sages to step back. Hearing this, although the great sages did as they were told and stepped back, they still felt strange. What was it that even the great sage wasn't qualified to interfere with? One had to know that great saint sovereigns were the strongest existences in the central world, but now they weren't even qualified to intervene. Seeing the will of the heavenly way, the great sages were very surprised, but in addition to being shocked, the great sages were very puzzled. What was going on, and what was that jade-white gate? They were confused, and their hearts felt like they were being scratched by a cat's paw. Anyway, this feeling was very uncomfortable. Their gazes looked at the will of the heavenly way for a while, and then looked at the jade-white gate for a while. Just as the great sages were looking at the gate of the immortal realm, the huge gate of the immortal realm that stretched across the sky slowly opened at this time. The gate slowly opened, and at the same time, a white mist spread out from the gap of the gate. Seeing the gate of the immortal realm slowly open, the great sages had no idea what was going on, but the will of the heavenly way said with a bitter smile at this time, "You came really quickly, but do you really think you can take down the seventh wilderness like this?" Said the will of the heavenly way slowly. As his voice fell 1, 2, 3, almost in an instant, A total of 8 spatial rifts appeared around the wheel of the heavenly way one after another, begging for collection, begging for monthly votes, begging for recommendations. Chapter 1538. Another 8 spatial rifts appeared. Seeing this, all the great sages present looked at the 8 spatial rifts. As the great sage, the strongest person in the central world, everyone was indeed in a difficult situation today. They had no idea what was going on until now. They were completely confused. Under the watchful eyes of the great sages, a voice that sounded like a drunkard's cursing could be heard from one of the spatial rifts. They're going to fight again. How annoying. Can't they just let me drink properly? It sounded like a drunkard cursing in the marketplace. Just by hearing this voice, one could already guess the voice's owner's appearance. Sure enough, after the cursing, a middle-aged man in ragged clothes, with unkempt hair and an unkempt face, walked out shakily. On his back was an incomparably huge wine jug, and he was a little taller than the rest of the people. The middle-aged man was from the human clan. With his appearance, Yin Yangzi, Xian Yuan Song Tao, Xing Zhantian, and Xian Yuan Wudi were all stunned. Then they exclaimed in unison, "Wine Taoist, great ancestor." Xian Yuan Song Tao, Xing Zhantian, and Xian Yuan Wudi called the middle-aged man Wine Taoist, while Yin Yangzi called him great ancestor. That's right, this drunken middle-aged man was the 8th sect master of the heavenly Yin Yang sect, known as Wine Taoist. He was a figure from who knows how many years ago, probably from the ancient times. A character from the ancient times was actually still alive. Furthermore, he had appeared in front of everyone, alive and well. Yin Yangzi and the other 3 naturally had never seen Wine Taoist before. However, as the sect master of the heavenly Yin Yang sect, he naturally had a ranking and portrait in the heavenly Yin Yang sect. He enjoyed the incense of the heavenly Yin Yang sect for generations. Moreover, even though the Wine Taoist was from ancient times, the Wine Taoist was definitely an influential figure in his era. When he was young, he was one of the top 3 holy sons on the saint ranking. After he became a great saint emperor, he even killed a great saint emperor of the Ghost clan by himself. It could be said that during the Wine Taoist era, the heights he attained were far, far greater than Yin Yangzi and the others. Hearing Yin Yangzi and the other 3's exclamations, the Wine Taoist burped and looked at Yin Yangzi and the other 3 with sleepy eyes. He spoke rather loudly. "Yo, little dolls of my human race. Come, let this old Taoist count. 1, 2, 4. Why are there only 4? Could it be that our human race has fallen to such a state? The great sage only has 4 people now." The Wine Taoist's appearance was indeed a little comical, but Yin Yangzi and the others didn't care at all. After recovering from his shock, Yin Yangzi took a step forward and bowed respectfully to the Wine Taoist. Junior Yin Yangzi of the Yin and Yang sect greets the ancestor. The Wine Taoist was indeed an immortal of the Yin and Yang sect. Everyone had always thought that he had died long ago. After all, he was a figure of the ancient era. Even the great sage didn't have such a long lifespan. Facing Yin Yangzi's bow, the Wine Taoist impatiently waved his hand. "Shoo, shoo, shoo. I'm annoyed by all of you prim and proper people. This old Taoist has long stopped being some bullshit ancestor. The Yin and Yang sect is now your Yin and Yang sect. What does it have to do with this old Taoist? However, if you really want to show your filial piety to this old Taoist, then give me some heavenly jade dew. This old Taoist will still be very happy." Heavenly jade dew was a fine wine unique to the Yin and Yang sect. However, it could no longer be brewed. There was only 1 jar left, and Yin Yangzi couldn't bear to drink it. However, after hearing the Wine Taoist's words, Yin Yangzi didn't hesitate at all. He immediately nodded and said, "Yes, this disciple will go get it." In front of the Wine Taoist, Yin Yangzi referred to himself as a disciple. Hearing this, the Wine Taoist smiled happily. Heavenly jade dew was a fine wine. However, just as the Wine Taoist was rejoicing, another voice rang out from the spatial rift. "Stop fooling around, drunkard. Don't you know what time it is?" Along with the voice, a middle-aged man from the divine race walked out of the spatial rift. He wore a long golden robe and looked very noble and dignified. All of the god race great sages present had been killed, but as soon as this middle-aged man appeared, one of the demon race great sages quickly revealed his identity. God, Shun Batian. Shun Batian was the #1 expert of the god race 2,000 years ago. He was hailed as the #1 genius in the history of the god race. His proudest battle record was when he single-handedly killed the great sage of the demon race and severely injured the great sage. In a 1-against-2 situation, Shun Batian was able to kill one and injure the other. One must know that the one he killed was the great sage. It was precisely because of this impressive battle record that the demon race remembered Shun Batian very clearly. Therefore, when he saw Shun Batian, the demon race great sage quickly stepped forward. Hearing the demon race great sage's exclamation, Shun Batian completely ignored it. Instead, he looked at the corpses of the 18 god race great sages. A complicated look flashed in his eyes. In the face of Shun Batian's silence, the wine Taoist burped and said, "What? Does your heart ache? Even if the heavenly Tao doesn't kill them, I will do it myself." Hearing this, Shun Batian coldly snorted, then looked away. The matter of the god race is not important. Let's think about how to deal with those guys first. Just as Shun Batian finished speaking, another voice rang out. Following that, a stooped old woman with a walking stick walked out. This old woman was from the celestial race. Seeing her appearance, Tian Wang and the other celestial race great sages were stunned. They kept thinking about the old woman's identity in their minds. In the end, Tian Wang was the first to exclaim, "Granny Tianxiu." Granny Tianxiu, like the wine Taoist, was also an ancient figure. This old woman was definitely a legend in the celestial race. She only stepped onto the martial path at the age of 70. Originally, she was already a dying person. But who would have thought that she would improve so quickly after stepping onto the martial path? In just 300 years, she had broken through to the great sage realm. Moreover, her battle strength was terrifying beyond belief. She was a figure from the same era as the wine Taoist. Hearing Tian Wang's exclamation, Granny Tianxiu glanced at him indifferently. Tian Wang and the other celestial race great sages cupped their hands respectfully and bowed. The wine Taoist, Shun Batian, and Granny Tianxiu were all supposed to be dead. But now, they appeared alive in front of everyone. And this was not the end. Out of the 8 spatial cracks, only 3 people appeared. Just as Granny Tianxiu appeared, a loud voice rang out from the spatial crack. It was so loud that it hurt everyone's eardrums. "Heavenly Tao, I told you. You can't be merciful to these guys." Begging for collection, begging for monthly votes, begging for recommendations. Chapter 1539. Wine Taoist, Shun Batian, and Granny Tianxiu, who were supposed to be dead, appeared before the great saints. Moreover, it was not just the 3 of them. After the 3 of them appeared, 5 figures walked out from each of the other spatial rifts. With the appearance of the other 5 people, the great saints present were completely dumbfounded. This was because the 8 people in front of them were, without exception, the patriarchs of various major clans. They should have been dead by now. The dead were resurrected? No. If they thought about it carefully, Wine Taoist and the others did not die back then, but mysteriously disappeared. After a long time, the world naturally thought that they were dead. In the central world, many experts would mysteriously disappear. This seemed to have become a habit, so the world did not make too many guesses about it. However, now it seemed that experts like Wine Taoist and the others who mysteriously disappeared were not dead, but had gone to a place in the central world that no one knew about. With the appearance of Wine Taoist and the others, all the great saints present were completely stunned. At the same time, the gate to the immortal domain was completely opened at this moment. The white mist was hazy, and at the same time, several figures also appeared under the white mist. Looking at these figures, Wine Taoist drank a mouthful of wine and said drunkenly, "These guys are really annoying." After about 100 breaths, the white mist slowly dissipated. Then, the figures shrouded in the white mist finally revealed their true appearances. There were a total of 5 people, and they were from different clans. There was the human clan, the divine clan, and the divine clan. Their appearance was no different from the 100 clans of the Central World. When the 5 of them appeared, they looked directly at the will of the heavenly way. The middle-aged man who led them laughed coldly. "Seventh Wilderness, it's already like this. Is there a need to continue resisting stubbornly?" They did not know what it meant to call the will of the heavenly way the seventh wilderness. However, when he heard this, the will of the heavenly way said calmly, "It's better to die in glory than to live in dishonor." It's better to die in glory than to live in dishonor. Hearing this, the middle-aged man chuckled. Then he looked at Wine Taoist and said with a smile, "Old drunkard, you're here too? Why didn't you hide in your wine cellar and drink? Are you in a hurry to die?" The middle-aged man and the wine Taoist clearly knew each other. Hearing this, the wine Taoist cursed. "What does my death have to do with you? Also, it's very rude to curse me to death as soon as we meet." The wine Taoist cursed, while the will of the heavenly way said, "Stop them. I want to seal the gate to the immortal region." The opening of the gate of the celestial realm. These 5 people were only the vanguard. There would be more powerful cultivators coming to the central world through the gate of the celestial realm. So they had to seal the gate of the celestial realm before that. The will of the heavenly way naturally wanted to directly destroy the gate of the immortal realm, but it was impossible. Therefore, they could only take a step back and temporarily seal the gate of the heavenly way. They would slowly think of a way later. Hearing the will of the heavenly way's words, the wine Taoist laughed heartlessly and then said lazily, "Sigh, how troublesome." However, although he said that, a terrifying aura instantly rose from the wine Taoist's body into the sky. As soon as this aura appeared, the expressions of the surrounding the great sage changed drastically. It was an extremely terrifying aura. Just a wisp of the aura was enough to make the hearts of the great sage tremble. What a joke! They had the cultivation of a great sage, but now they could not even withstand a wisp of the wine Taoist's aura. Moreover, the wine Taoist was not targeting them. The so-called aura that the great sage felt was just a remnant of the aura. Even so, it still shocked everyone. It was hard to imagine that if they were to face the wine Taoist face to face, the wine Taoist would be able to crush the great sage present with just this wisp of aura. They could not even withstand his aura. Was he really the strongest person in the central world? The great sages did not know what cultivation level the wine Taoist had reached, but they were certain that the wine Taoist cultivation had definitely surpassed the great sage realm. It was not just the wine Taoist. At this time, Shun Batian, Granny Tianxiu, and the other 7 people also had terrifying auras that rose to the sky. They were not weaker than the wine Taoists. Terrifying, extremely terrifying. The wine Taoist and the others in front of them could be said to have completely investigated the knowledge of the great sage present. It was hard to imagine that there was such a strong existence in this world. It was no exaggeration to say that the wine Taoist and the other 7 people were enough to suppress the entire central world. Even if the power of the entire central world was gathered, it would probably be difficult to compete with any one of them. The expressions of the great sages changed drastically. However, the 5 people who walked out of the gate of the immortal domain did not change their expressions at all. They did not have any intention of attacking. It was still the middle-aged man who spoke. He looked at the heavenly way and smiled. "Seventh Wilderness, you want to seal the gate of the immortal domain, but this seal is only temporary. How long can you last? This time, we're not just here to pass a message to you. Surrender. There is no need to stubbornly resist anymore." He had no intention of attacking at all. As soon as he finished speaking, the The middle-aged man turned and walked back into the gate of the immortal domain. At the same time, the other 4 people naturally followed closely behind. They had no intention of attacking at all. In fact, they had no choice because the gate of the immortal domain had just been formed. Moreover, it was impossible for a large number of experts to come over in a short period of time. Therefore, the forces behind the middle-aged man had no intention of invading the central world now. The 5 of them had indeed come only to pass a message. There was no need to rush. In any case, the gate of the immortal domain had been formed. The heavenly way could not destroy it. So even if it was sealed, how long could it last? When the forces behind the middle-aged man were ready and the seal was broken, it would be time for them to take down the central world. The 5 people left. The wine Taoist and the others did not stop them. It was not that they did not want to, but that they could not. Although the 5 people did not reveal any aura from beginning to end, the wine Taoist and the others knew very well that the 5 people's strength was not weaker than theirs. Therefore, it was meaningless to forcefully stop them. The wine Taoist and the others did not attack, and the heavenly way could not free himself. At this moment, the will heavenly way was doing his best to seal the gate of the immortal domain. In any case, no matter how long they could hold on, the most important thing now was to seal the gate of the immortal domain. As for how long they could hold on, that was a matter for another day. Please collect, vote, recommend. Chapter 1540. The will of the heavenly way did not stop the 5 from leaving, and the wine Taoist and the others did not make a move either. After all, there was no point in leaving the 5 behind, as the gate of the celestial realm was still there. It took the will of the heavenly way an entire day to successfully seal the gate of the celestial realm. At this time, the gate of the celestial realm was firmly bound by 5 colored chains. These chains were the will of the heavenly way's seal. After doing this, the will of the heavenly way secretly heaved a sigh of relief. However, this seal was only temporary and would not last for long. Turning his head to look at the wine Taoist and the other great saints present, the will of the heavenly way said faintly, "Stop the war of the 100 clans. Also, it's rare for you to come back, so go and take a look at your respective clans. At the same time, stop the war of the 100 clans as soon as possible." With that, the will of the heavenly way's figure disappeared on the spot. After the will of the heavenly way left, the wine Taoist and the others returned to their respective clans and arrived at the Wana mountain range with Yangzi and the others. At this time, the human clan and the demon clan were indeed in a temporary truce. Along the way, they followed the wine Taoist. Even Yangzi and the others appeared very nervous. There was no other way. This was a genuine ancestor of the human clan. They did not stay in the Wana mountain range for long. After the wine Taoist, Yangzi and the others arrived, the human clan began to withdraw from the Wana mountain range on the same day. At the same time, the ghost clan on the other side did the same and also retreated to the ghost clan's territory. With the appearance of the gate of the celestial realm, the will of the heavenly way had already announced the suspension of the war of the 100 clans. As for the heavenly way stones, the wine Taoist and the others also said that without the will of the heavenly way's help, the heavenly way stones were useless even if they were treasures, so there was no need to fight for them. All the way back to Supreme Sky City, the changes in the situation were indeed too sudden, leaving many clans in the great world confused. Fortunately, wine Taoist and the others were around. So many questions could be answered. In the main hall of Haoyan City, Yangzi's group of 4, Shao Qin's group of saints on the human clan saint ranking, and the heads of other major forces were gathered together. On the main seat, drunken Taoist was leaning on it. Yangzi and the others were already used to the wine Taoist. However, the sect leaders of the other major forces were all sitting upright and still. At the same time, their hearts were in turmoil. There was nothing he could do about it. That was the wine Taoist. It would be a lie to say that he wasn't nervous. Ignoring everyone's reaction, the wine Taoist drank a mouthful of wine before burping. I know what you're all wondering. There are many things that I'll tell you slowly. The sudden stop of the 100 Races War, the gate to the immortal domain, the sudden appearance of the great sage in the divine race, and the mysterious youth, all of these were questions. In order to solve these questions, they had to start with the mysterious disappearance of the powerhouses in the Central World. As everyone knew, many powerhouses in the Central World would suddenly disappear without a trace. No one knew where they went or what happened. Wine Taoist was one such example. According to the Wine Taoist, these people did not go missing. Instead, they received a summons from the will of the heavenly way. Everyone knew that this world was made up of the Central World and the 4 great astral realms. They also knew that a long time ago, the Central World and the 4 great astral realms were one. They only separated later on, but before the 100 Races War, they would merge again. However, other than that, no one knew that the Central World and the 4 great astral realms were not the entirety of this world. The periphery of the world was the starry sky. What was beyond the starry sky? Was the starry sky infinite? Obviously not. The areas beyond the starry sky were called wastelands. There was not only one wasteland, but a total of 8. The Central World that everyone was in was known as the 7th Wasteland. In the 7th Wasteland, there were a total of 7 continents like the Central World. Each continent was the same size as the Central World. In each wasteland, there was an existence known as the will of the heavenly way. No one knew how this will of the heavenly way appeared, but he represented the will of heaven and earth. He could mobilize the power of heaven and earth at will. He did not need to cultivate, but he had unparalleled, terrifying power. For a long time, every will of the heavenly way controlled a wasteland. They had never interfered with each other's business. The 8 wastelands formed heaven and earth. The 8 will of the heavenly way each controlled a wasteland. However, no one knew when a faction known as the Hachibara Sankai had appeared in the first wasteland. The Hachibara Sankai was very strong. There were warriors of all races in the first wasteland, regardless of race. In the beginning, the appearance of the Hachibara Sankai did not attract the attention of the will of the heavenly way. However, the Hachibara Sankai developed very quickly. In just 100 years, it had used some unknown method to seal the will of the heavenly way in the first wasteland. From then on, it replaced the will of the heavenly way and successfully controlled the first wasteland. The will of the heavenly way being sealed was indeed something that had never happened before. However, after the Hachibara Sankai successfully sealed the first wasteland, its ambition did not stop. It continued to attack and occupy the other wastelands. Naturally, the 7th wasteland was also on the Hachibara Sankai's attack list. The Hachibara Sankai had many strong warriors. Even the will of the heavenly way was no match for it. Therefore, in the face of the Hachibara Sankai's attack, the will of the heavenly way of the 7th wasteland had no choice but to transfer all the strong warriors in the 7th wasteland to outside the mainland. They formed a defensive perimeter around the 7th wasteland to resist the Hachibara Sankai's attack. This was also the reason why there were no strong warriors who had surpassed the Great Sage Realm in the Central World. These strong warriors had all rushed to the front line to fight against the Hachibara Sankai. Moreover, people like the drunken Taoist suddenly disappeared because the will of the heavenly way felt that they had broken through the Great Sage Realm and summoned them. The war with the Hachibara Sankai had been going on for a long time. Over time, it seemed to have become a habit in the 7th wasteland. That was, once someone had surpassed the Great Sage Realm, they had to leave the mainland and go to the battlefield to fight against the Hachibara Sankai. Because the will of the heavenly way set the battlefield in the periphery of the 7th wasteland, it did not affect the mainland in the 7th wasteland, nor did it affect the many creatures in the 7th wasteland. However, this peace was bought with the blood and flesh of countless ancestors. In the battle against the Hachibara Sankai, the many ancestors of the 7th wasteland paid a heavy price. He slowly told everyone present about the Hachibara Sankai. As for the young man who appeared in the Protoss, He was naturally a member of the Hachibara Senkai. However, with his cultivation, he should only be a small character at the bottom of the Hachibara Senkai. It was a pity that such a small character had now brought a huge crisis to the Seventh Wasteland. Please add, please vote, please recommend. Chapter 1541. After telling everyone about the Hachibara Senkai, everyone, including Inyangzi and the other three, was stunned when they heard Wine Taoist's words. Who would have thought that the 8 wildernesses existed outside the Central World? There were 7 continents like the Central World in the 7th wildernesses alone. Wine Taoist smiled slightly when he saw everyone's shocked expressions. What's there to be surprised about? Besides, does the 8 wildernesses represent this world? Who can guarantee that there are other worlds outside the 8 wildernesses? There's nothing to be shocked about. How big were the aristocratic families, and how vast the world was? Who could say for sure? Did the 8 wildernesses really represent this world? Were there really no other worlds outside the 8 wildernesses? This was something that the 5 of them could obviously guarantee. After hearing Wine Taoist's words, Inyangzi and the other 3, as well as Xiao Chun and the other chosen on the holy rankings, were the first to recover from their shock. Then, Xiao Chun suddenly spoke. Great Ancestor, what's the realm above the Great Sage Realm? After learning about the Hachibara Senkai and the Gate of the Immortal Realm, Xiao Chun was now most concerned about the cultivation realm above the Great Sage Realm. It was definitely a new realm that people yearned for. After hearing Xiao Chun's words, everyone's eyes fell on Wine Taoist again. Not only Xiao Chun, but everyone else was also very interested in this question. They looked at Xiao Chun with great interest. Wine Taoist naturally knew that Xiao Chun was the current first chosen of the human race. A faint smile hung on the corner of his mouth. He took a sip of wine and said faintly, Blessed by the Holy Spirit, immortal ascension. Above the Sage Realm is the Immortal Realm. It was a very simple sentence, but it had already given Xiao Chun the answer. Above the Great Sage Realm was the Immortal Realm. After hearing Wine Taoist's answer, Xiao Chun said thoughtfully, The Immortal Realm. For everyone present, this was definitely a realm that they had never come into contact with before. The Immortal Realm was the realm above the Great Sage Realm. Seeing that everyone was deep in thought, Wine Taoist smiled and said, All right, these things are still far away from you. It's useless to think about it. The right path is to cultivate with peace of mind. I've already answered all your questions. Next, the War of the 100 Clans will be temporarily stopped. Wait for the next instructions from the Heavenly Tao. The Wine Taoist had said everything that needed to be said. There was no need for them to do anything for the time being. As for the Hachibara Senkai, the Wine Taoist had only mentioned it for the sake of everyone. At that level, it was no longer something that they could interfere with. They wouldn't even be considered cannon fodder if they went. At the level of the Immortal Realm, wanting to rely on numbers to win was already a fool's dream. Facing an immortal realm martial artist, even if you had 1,000,000 people besieging him, you wouldn't be able to hurt him at all. Therefore, in the face of the Hachibara Senkai, no one could help. There was no need to think too much about it now. As for Wine Taoist, he would stay with the human race for the time being and wait for the next instructions from the Heavenly Way. After saying that, Wine Taoist didn't make any special movements, but his figure directly disappeared from the hall. It wasn't until Wine Taoist disappeared that everyone present came to their senses one after another and left the hall one after another. The War of the 100 Clans had stopped, and no one could interfere with the Hachibara Senkai. Everything should temporarily return to normal, just like before the War of the 100 Clans began. Wine Taoist had said a lot just now, but there were 2 points that he didn't mention. The first was about the War of the 100 Clans. Why didn't he say it? It was because some things weren't suitable for everyone to know because the truth was too cruel. To put it simply, the War of the 100 Clans was set up by the Heavenly Way. There were 2 reasons why it was set up. The first was to provide the 7th wilderness with experts. After every War of the 100 Clans, the Heavenly Way would select some of the great sage to help them break through to the immortal realm. Then, they would replenish the front lines on the battlefield to fight against the Hachibara Senkai. This was the first reason, but it wasn't the most important. The Heavenly Way's real purpose for setting up the War of the 100 Clans was to reduce the population of the 7th Wilderness. People would always die in war, but it was also the simplest and most effective way to reduce the population. Moreover, because of the constant battles with the Hachibara Senkai, the 7th Wilderness various resources were very scarce and couldn't afford to raise too many martial artists. Therefore, every time the population of the 7th Wilderness reached a certain number, the Heavenly Way would start the War of the 100 Clans. After a War of the 100 Clans, the population of the 7th Wilderness would definitely decrease sharply. In this way, the Heavenly Way could use more of the 7th Wilderness resources on the battlefield to fight against the Hachibara Senkai. Wasn't it cruel? But what could be done? Wine Daoist didn't tell everyone about this because the truth was too cruel. The other thing was about the Hachibara Senkai. The main reason why Wine Daoist had said that the Hachibara Senkai couldn't interfere was the composition of the Hachibara Senkai. Unlike ordinary sects, the Hachibara Senkai didn't have disciples, only members, and there weren't many of them. After so many years of fighting, Wine Daoist knew very well that the number of martial artists attacking the 7th Wilderness wouldn't exceed 500. 500 people wanting to invade a desolate land? Wasn't it a little ridiculous at first? After all, not to mention a desolate land, just the central world alone had tens of billions of cultivators. A mere 500 people was like a drop in the ocean. However, if you were told that the lowest cultivation among these 500 people was at the immortal realm, would you still be able to laugh? That's right, the number of members of the Hachibara Senkai was very, very small. Altogether, there were probably only a few thousand people, and this was after tens of thousands of years of development. However, despite the small number, if one wanted to enter the Hachibara Senkai, one had to be at the immortal realm. The Hachibara Senkai never accepted martial artists who were below the immortal realm. This was the Hachibara Senkai, the gathering place of true powerhouses. There were no weaklings, only powerhouses. Any member of the Hachibara Senkai was enough to set off a storm anywhere. The humans knew about the Hachibara Senkai. At the same time, the other races like the Ghost Race, the Celestial Race, the Beast Race, and the Demon Race also learned about the Hachibara Senkai from their respective ancestors. While the powerhouses of the various races were shocked, they stopped fighting. After all, they now knew that there were foreign enemies, and that the 7th Wilderness was in danger. With a gate to the immortal realm, the Hachibara Senkai could directly cross the 7th Wilderness line of defense and descend upon the central world, bringing the flames of war directly to the 7th Wilderness. Please add, vote, recommend. You're tuning in to the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.